The following is an exclusive national high-definition broadcast of Indiana University's Little 500 on HDNet.
Months of preparation and hard work, becoming a team worthy to win. One of the most challenging bike races you will ever see. An unmatched college tradition, decades in the making. It's the 58th running of Indiana University's Men's Little 500. The field for today's Men's Little 500 is deeper and stronger than ever. As many as 8 teams have a shot this year. Yesterday, the weather granted a reprieve to the women. It looks far more menacing today for the men. High winds, 40-degree temperatures, and it has started to drizzle. Merely another element to enhance the biggest collegiate bike race in the country and cap off the world's greatest college weekend, the 58th running of the Men's Little 500. Hello again, everybody. Judd Surratt, thank you joining us for HDNet's coverage once again of the Little 500 here at Indiana University. I'm joined once again by Jason Sonneborn, a Bloomington native, an Indiana University graduate, and an all-star rider in this event. And this is easily the biggest event that is circled on the IU calendar.
There's no question, Judd. It is the greatest day of the year here in Bloomington, Indiana, and Indiana University. It's a showcase for the Student Foundation. Today you'll see 15,000 fans roar into the stadium after a morning of tailgating to root on their favorite teams. It really is the greatest day of the year here.
The only thing that may have changed for some of the people who are going to watch today's event is what they're drinking. They may have switched from beer to whiskey. We move over to my other partner, Dylan Casey, a former U.S. Olympic cyclist. Dylan, one of the things that we talked about yesterday, the sacrifice that these riders will make, and in order to be a good cyclist, you have to love pain.
You're right, Judd. Because here at the Bill Armstrong Stadium, we have the House of Pain. And all the riders here have a great ticket, and they're going to show up here and have a great day. But you really have to learn how to suffer, how to embrace it, and how to push through it, because that's what it's going to take to win on the last lap of the Little 500.
This was an event that was started by the IU Foundation. And this also marks the departure of IU Foundation President Kurt Simic. He's been serving in that post for the last 20 years, but his association with this race dates back to the late 50s. He rode for Dodds House back in 1959, and because of his 5 decades associated with the Little 500, we wanted to get his perspective on how the event has changed over the years.
I came here in the summer of 1959, nearly 50 years ago already. My first race, it was all mysterious. And in those days, we didn't have this nice stadium with wide turns. We had a very narrow stadium that was a track built around a football field. We were competitive. I think we ended up 10th in the race that year. And in today's world, if you're in the top 10 or 15, you've done a good job. Actually, we weren't nearly as good as these riders are, and nearly as good as these teams are now. I think the biggest difference is the depth of quality of the riders and the teams. It gets better and better because there's more experience around, there's more experienced coaching around. And when you have good coaches and they understand how to develop the strategy as well as to develop the training regimen, you end up with just much more sophisticated riders. Here are these wonderful, talented young people who are giving their time and energy, not just to be active and do something, but because this ends up being a critically important piece of campus life in the sense that it raises money for students who are working their way through school. What we're trying to do is teach philanthropy through event fundraising. It's a complex enterprise. It really is quite complex to put on something of this magnitude, from everything from the communications on the field to relating to the larger public through television and a variety of other ways, to just the timing and scoring mechanism, which is quite complex. So they do learn a lot. They do have that opportunity, and like anything else, the more they put into it as an individual, any one of them puts into it, the more they get out of it. The Student Foundation was put together on the premise that if we can engage students while they're here as undergraduates in a constructive way with the university, they'll stay interested in the university. On the track, you're just colleagues, and you're out there competing, and you become friends across the board. And I have friends, probably partly because of my job now, because I can stay in touch with them, but it's also true, friends who we've been in touch for 50 years. 50 years. It really gave me my handle, it gave me my hook to the university because of the bike race. And so it's been a critical part of my whole undergraduate life, and then from then on.
In part due to CIMIC's efforts, the IU Foundation, the Student Foundation as well, has helped raise more than $1.5 million for working students here at Indiana University, and he's a very difficult guy for this school to replace.
Kurt's a very special man. He's someone who's dedicated his professional life to building this race, which really creates student leaders here at Indiana University. And what happens is a lifelong relationship that they continue to have with this university. And Kurt's a special man. Again, he's dedicated his entire professional life to this, and he's sent people out there in the workforce and in the world that are incredible leaders, incredible people that give back to their schools and their students.
Well, we have a fourth member of our broadcast crew today. It is Hans Arneson. Yesterday, he was coaching his sister's team for Gamma Phi Beta in 2006 as part of Alpha Tau Omega, an epic ride, and they won that year. He lapped the field. Hans, we wanted to get your perspective trackside. What will it take to win, and how will the conditions affect today's riders?
Well, I think it's going to be an epic day today as well. It's cold and it's windy down here on the track. You can see there's a very strong tailwind on this starting stretch here. But you know what? I walked around the track earlier today and I talked with the teams, and they're not afraid of these conditions. They've been training in these conditions all year round. All winter long they've been riding in this kind of stuff. But I do think that it's going to make for an interesting race. It's going to make sure that the top teams are going to separate themselves early from some of the other riders. You see this starting stretch has a super strong tailwind. With a single speed bike, you can only pedal it so fast. You can't get much of an advantage on this side of the track. On the other side of the track, you've got the headwind. Very, very strong headwind, and strong teams are going to be able to take advantage of that. In 2006, we were able to take advantage of the headwind, separate ourselves from the pack. And today, I think that some of the stronger teams are going to separate themselves from the weaker teams fairly early. Now, turn one, you've got the tailwind. It's going to be very, very fast. It could be sketchy. Also, in turn two, the riders are going to be coming around and hitting that headwind. Is going to be moving the riders around. That's where I think it's most likely for any wrecks to happen.
Acacia, Pizza Express, the corporate sponsor, Pat Alberg.
Well, with the conditions today, the experienced riders, Jason and Dylan, one of the things they've talked about is being an adept bike handler is really going to pay off today.
Yeah, sure. Where you are on the track means a lot today, Judd, and experience goes a long way. So the experienced teams to watch today are the Cutters, Dodds House, Black Key Balls, but veteran riders that know where to sit in the wind, in the rain, in these tough conditions. That's really what's going to pay off.
Yeah, I think we're going to see in the first part of the race a real, action. All the riders are going to be jockeying for position. They want to get to the front. They want to stay out of trouble. And then they're going to see a little bit of a lull where everybody kind of takes an opportunity to kind of assess the situation and then execute the next game plan.
When we return, we'll take a look at some of the favorites in today's men's race and also take a look back at yesterday's 21st running of the women's Little 500. Stay with us for more of our coverage here on HDNet. Yesterday, Barack Obama made a surprise visit here to Bloomington in the 21st running of the women's Little 500. They said around here it was as big as the last time IU won the NCAA title in hoops. Guys, we saw a deeper field than we have seen in past years. Teeter was heavily favored, and it looked like 25 laps in, they could run away with it, Dylan.
You know, I thought they totally decimated the race right from the beginning, but we saw a reshuffling of the deck, and it became a four-person race right away.
Yeah, and the exciting thing about it, we learned anything can happen in the Little 500, right? The race was up the road yesterday, and we saw a first-time champion in Delta Gamma. So remember that today. Anything can happen.
And we saw some gutsy efforts from some women's teams that had to come from behind to make up a big gap.
Yeah, you're right. You know, they didn't panic. When Teeter made their big attack and blew the race wide open, they kept their game plan. They did clean exchanges, and they stayed focused, and they brought it back together, and we saw a great finish.
And it came down to these final few laps, final few exchanges.
It was amazing, actually. And what they did, they rode their sprinter 2 or 3 laps in, let the sprinter set it up for Delta Gamma. It had a nice gap, and they took that all the way to the finish with an exchange on lap 98.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting because Delta Gamma did exactly what Teeter should have done given how much horsepower they had. They took advantage of the other teams making their exchanges, and instead of coming in and doing an exchange, they just went for it and won the race.
And for the first time ever, Delta Gamma won the race. They were not able to be caught. They had a sizable lead. Jessica Lander was on the bike. She had no idea, Dylan, you called it, that she won. She didn't celebrate until she hit turn 1.
I don't think she wanted to make sure she actually won the race before she let up on the gas.
And she was pretty gassed, Dylan. I mean, she laid it all out there on that last lap. Well, and couldn't have gone a couple more.
Absolutely, and that's how you win bike races is you go for it and you don't look back.
She said she would have preferred the cookies and cream shake from Steak and Shake. Instead, it was a strawberry shake. Nevertheless, the bike that they held up is the exact same bike that everyone will ride in both the men's and the women's race. And for a closer look at what they call here the great equalizer, we shift now to Dylan Casey.
I'm with Stephanie from the Student Foundation. I have the official Schwinn Little 500 bike. What's interesting and significant about this bike is that it only has one gear. They run a 46-18 gear. They only have one rear coaster brake. On top of that, each team is required per the rules to use the same bike. They have the ability to change out the stem, the handlebars, and maybe the saddle. But each team is going to be out there today in the Little 500 competing on this bike with no handbrakes. We're going to see some great action, some great spills. This is the official bike. It's the great equalizer of the Little 500.
Yesterday, I think it caught a lot of us by surprise that there were few wrecks in the women's race, but they are a constant. They will take place, and they can be gruesome. This is an event that is put on by the students, and because of that, we wanted to enlist some of the students here at Indiana University who take part in the film school to get their perspective on some of the events that lead up to the Little 500. Phenomenal work by those students, an avant-garde look at the Spring Series events that lead up to the men's Little 500. We want to thank all the students who helped put that together, in particular Matt Rice. Guys, these are some of the favorites we'll be looking to today, in particular the Cutters. They are the returning champions.
Sure, it's going to be a great race to watch today. Cutters with 8 wins going up against Black Key Bulls, 0 wins. And arguably the best rider on the track this year, Isaac Neff on Black Key Bulls. So you have experience in the newcomers.
Absolutely, and there's been a whole host of events that led up to today, and really it's given everybody the opportunity to see who's got the most horsepower.
Team Major Taylor also was a huge contender last year, and it was Ali Kamara out of the box who rode an incredible first set, 65 laps.
65 laps, and you just don't see that very often. I was down the pit earlier today, and he says he's going to try to do the exact same thing this year. The fans in the crowd, fans in the stands have an over-under on how many laps Ali can ride first set out.
There are also some other powerhouse teams. Phi Kappa Psi. They haven't won this race in many years, but a traditional power, as well as Phi Delta Theta.
Sure, and I think Phi Kappa Psi with 7 wins, it's great to see them back as one of the top teams in the race. And Phi Delta Theta last one in 2001, also won in 1996. 2 really strong fraternity teams that are going to make a dent on the race today.
Last year, this race came down to a final sprint. It was Alex Bishop who came on the inside for the Cutters and beat Phi Kappa Psi and Eric Stajicic. For Bishop, a tremendous ride. He will not be riding today, even though he is only a junior. For the Cutters, it was their 8th win, tied for the most all time. And he is standing by downstairs with our Hans Arneson.
Well, given the weather conditions today with the super high winds, I think it's going to take a rider with great control and being able to mash the gears. It's going to be a great race, but Alex, what do you think the weather conditions and how are they going to play out today and affect the race?
Attention again in the
the weather's really bad, as you can tell today, and there's this monster headwind on the backstretch here, and I think turn 2 is going to be really bad. I think there's going to be a lot of wrecks in turn 2 because they're going to come into that wind and hit it hard, and it's going to push everyone out. I think there's going to be a lot of wheel rubbing, and a lot of people are going to go down, and it's going to make a really tough day for a lot of riders, especially if they're caught alone by themselves. In the wind, they got a lot of work to do, and I think the race is going to be really blown apart.
How do you think that your pit location, being down here on the stretch where there's a headwind, how's that going to affect the way the Cutters are going to ride and do their burnouts?
We were kind of unlucky. Quals didn't really go that great for us, but so we're on the backstretch here with this monster headwind. And it's really going to hurt our exchanges, I think, because right when you come into this headwind, it's going to be really hard to get a burnout and a gap on the field, and that's kind of going to tax our riders a little bit more, trying to get a good exchange off and get into the field.
What do you think it's going to take to win? Where are the riders going to have to start their sprint? What are they going to have to do if it comes down to a sprint?
It's probably going to come down to a sprint, I would guess. And with this this headwind here on the backstretch, I really think any rider who gets into turn 3 the first, is going to win it. But we'll see how it plays out today, All
right. Thanks, Alex.
Yep. Good job.
Well, if it does come down to a sprint, guys, I talked with Isaac Neff a little bit about this, who's going to be riding for Black Key Bulls. He said it will be essential to have that inside wheel. What's he talking about?
Absolutely, because of the wind and the way that the riders are going to be racing for that last corner, coming around on the inside is the shortest way to the finish line, so that's why it's so important to have that wheel.
Let's throw it down to the infield here at Bill Armstrong Stadium for today's invocation from Father Bob Keller.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and remove your caps. Our invocation today will be offered by the Reverend Father Bob Keller from the St. Paul's Student Catholic Church.
I don't know about you, but Mother of God, it's cold out here. But we hope that it'll be a day that'll be good for our competitors. Let us take a moment of pause. So we gather on this blustery day for a drama, It is a drama of skill and of heart and of glory. The test of this race lies more than just in athletic ability. It is a spirit quest encoded in your focusing of body, mind, and spirit around the circumference of this track. May we witness what is deepest within us: fidelity in effort, just manners toward one another, and in the joy of the pursuit of excellence. Though differently talented, each competitor and team contributes to a legacy that is larger than yourself. O source of all that is good, then, keep us safe in the turns of this track and in the turns of our lives, and may we acknowledge the place of integrity always, even above competition, and celebrate what is most noble in this race and in our lives, and carry that beyond this day. Amen.
Our colors today are being presented by the Pershing Rifles Color Guard from Indiana University's ROTC program. The Pershing Rifles Color Guard is a competitive drill and honor squad that consistently receives high marks in national competition. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to introduce Sylvia McNair, a member of the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music and the faculty, as she is also a two-time Grammy Award winner. Sylvia, our featured vocalist, as she presents our national anthem.
Please join me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Sylvia McNair. With the starting riders now in the grid, the 11 rows of 3 for 33 total, we get ready for racing. Let's join now with the acclaimed a cappella group of Indiana University, Straight No Chaser, back home again in Indiana.
Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still shining bright through the sycamores for me. about the moonlight on the Wabash. Then I long for my Indiana home. Back home again in Indiana, and it seems that I can see the gleaming candlelight still shining bright, the sycamores for me. The new moon hay sends all its fragrance from the fields I used to roam. When I dream out on the Wabash, then I long for my Indiana home.
Straight no chaser. If you are in the infield and not officially credentialed as a participant or official, please move into the seating stands or spectator areas. Only properly credentialed personnel will be permitted in the infield. We welcome now to the microphone, ladies and gentlemen, today's race starter, Indiana University Foundation President Curtis R. Simic.
Well, gentlemen, this is the moment that you've been training for. This is the moment you've worked so hard for. From now on, the whole day is in your hands, and all we hope for you is safe race, good competition, and a great ending. Gentlemen, mount your Schwinn bicycles.
So the riders will jump onto their bikes to take a couple of parade laps, photographers' laps before the race begins. Kurt Simic, by the way, raced for Dodds House, another power that will have a chance today, Jason, that we didn't really have a chance to talk about in our top 5 favorites.
Well, there's no question with Dodds House. A long tradition of excellence there today, and they really have some experience on the track. They have Dan Houchins, who's ridden 4 excellent years. They have Mike Shear, you know, a great rider who's also done a lot of racing on the velodrome on the track. So look for Dodds House to really carry on that tradition that Kurt Simic and a lot of other guys like Alex Enan and Jonathan Purvis have started.
This race is modeled exactly after the Indianapolis 500. It was founded by Howdy Wilcox, and his father raced and won in that back in 1919. So there are 33 teams that will be competing today. 11 rows of 3, 200 laps for the men, 100 for the women. It will be just over 50 miles, about 51 and a couple of tenths of a mile. They will have to do at least 10 exchanges during the course of the race. They can do more, but they cannot do less.
Yeah, you know, and what's significant about having the minimum number of exchanges is that, you know, some of the teams have a strategy where they'll have one rider ride a huge set in the beginning, 50, 60 laps, which is something that you don't normally see, but these rules start to come into play later on. There's a whole staff of people below us in the press box that are keeping track of which teams have done what.
As they come through turn 4, let's take a look at some of the competitors today. Sigma Alpha Mu, somewhat of a surprise. They are the pole sitters today. Team Major Taylor, one of the favorites we've talked about, and Phi Kappa Psi, third with 7 wins all time. In row 2, you have Phi Delta Theta, 3 wins. Their last one came in 2001. This is their 53rd appearance in the Little 500. Acacia, also a team that has an opportunity. They have 3 wins. 91, 83, and 1961.
Yeah, watch both the Fidel team and the Acacia team. They have a lot of experience in their pits. In Acacia, it's Kevin Vanes, and I believe for Phi Delta Theta, it's Josh Beatty. But what happens is those experienced riders come back and implement the strategy that may have worked for them in the past.
We saw a moment ago in row 3, Ride DMC. This is their first appearance in the Little 500. Most of their members were a part of Alpha Epsilon Pi, but because the fraternity, their charter has been suspended, they have actually filed for an appeal, and they've been allowed to race and compete today. There are the cutters in row 5, and their ringer today, their heavyweight Sasha Land.
Yeah, Sasha is going to start on the bike for them today, but lots of weight back there with Phi Gamma Delta. I believe they have 6 wins, Cutters with 8 wins, a lot of strong teams starting in the middle of the pack. As you can see, Dodds House and Black Key Bulls. It's really going to be fun to watch as those teams in the middle and in the back, they're going to try to move up right away, and you'll see them swinging outside, maybe sitting on the inside, but a lot of action is going to happen early.
For Crew Cycling, this is their first appearance in the race. Beta Theta Pi has been around a long time in this race. This is their 48th. Their last win, 1964.
So I just saw the race official give 1 lap to go. You know, they have these first couple of laps. It's kind of like a parade just to get the team set.
In row 9, you saw Hans Arnesson's former team, Alpha Tau Omega. They won this race in 2006, failed to qualify last year for the race. They were unable to complete the 3 exchanges during qualifications. The first time it has ever happened that a returning champion has not come back to defend its title.
And qualifications are so important, Judd. It's 4 laps on the track. They happen in March, and it's four laps as fast as you can go, and you exchange each lap. So qualifications means a lot. Here they come around at turn 4.
They'll start to gather some speed. Chappie Blackwell readies himself as the start of the green flag is waved, and we're underway for the 58th Men's Little 500.
Oh, and right away I saw a little wobbling there on the middle. You have a lot of inexperienced teams up front, and a lot of guys. There goes Isaac Neff on the outside, and Dodds House right on his wheel. Oh, you're seeing a lot of momentum come through on the outside right now.
Yeah, right now it's just a fight for position because those teams that didn't really qualify that well still want to get to the front so they can stay out of trouble, which was inevitably going to happen in the first part of this race.
And what you don't want to do is burn yourself out too early. Isaac has a lot of horsepower. It doesn't surprise me at all that he's out there rolling right now.
Isaac Neff, the only Category 1 rider in today's race, I believe, along with Sasha Land.
Yeah, and that's significant because Category 1 riders are typically the elite amateurs on the United States Cycling Federation. We've already seen a crash here. This is exactly what the riders are trying to avoid. We see the yellow flag coming out. And so the field is kind of neutralized while these guys try to get back up on their bike and make, rejoin the front of the race. Everybody's required to maintain their position.
Just awful lot of carnage early. Hopefully that young man's okay.
We also saw a penalty here for, I believe, Alpha Tau Omega that they briefly served. 2 seconds.
You can see that rider looked like they just overlapped a wheel, just enough to lose control of the bike, and it just caused a huge chain reaction there. You can already see the pain on some of their faces.
I think it was actually Sigma Pi that went down first. It looked like he just rubbed his front wheel on the rear wheel of the rider in front of him.
That's right, and that's why these bikes are hard to handle, because they don't have the normal handbrakes that most bikes do. It's just that coaster brake, and so it doesn't make it easy to handle the modulations and the change of speeds in the pack, and so you have those little overlap mishap. Sure enough, guys are on the ground.
And so what we saw early there was our top teams come flying around the outside to be up front. The reason they wanted to do that, they didn't want to be behind that wreck.
Yeah, that's right. And you can see the whole bunch at the back just hitting the ground, and that's exactly why you want to be at the front, especially at this first part of the race.
We're going back to green. That was Max Phillips, by the way, who took the digger on the back stretch, a junior from Sullivan, Indiana.
And that's Mike Shear on the bike for Dodds House. Oh, and he's absolutely blazing on the bike right now. He wants to drop anyone on the back.
Yeah, he's flying, and you can see the riders coming out of turn 3 or turn 4 right there, just trying to make contact.
And it's really, you know, they have to get back into the bunch as soon as they possibly can because they don't want to waste a bunch of energy in the headwind.
Mike Shear and Dodds House coming across here as we're 4 laps down.
I already count 9 teams that are off the back. And this rider right here is actually being told by the referees to move out of the way because the peloton is coming up behind him.
We can start to see some of the conversation going on. Dylan and Jason, how much of that is gamesmanship? How much of that is strategy?
It's a lot of strategy. It's a lot around safety, Judd. I mean, one of the reasons they talk to each other is because they're not out there trying to wreck each other, right? They want to communicate and be in good position throughout the day.
Dylan, is it also an opportunity to get in some riders' heads?
Yeah, you know, why not? It's like, this is a long race, so it's never too early to try to win.
Well, and what you can see now, you see Black Key Bowls and Cutters up there on the front. What happens after a wreck is everybody gets a little bit antsy, and you realize how that's going to happen, and you absolutely don't want to get yourself stuck at the back.
Yeah, and these riders, you know, they're cold. They're trying to get warmed up. They're a little nervous. They want to stay at the front, but they don't want to waste too much energy being at the front. Probably going to see some exchanges start to happen up here pretty soon.
See Cutters pulling through on the outside. There's Sasha Land on the bike.
And he's looking around trying to see who's going to come with him.
Jim Kirkham, the coach of Cutters, the affable redhead, said he's the fastest guy on the track, and I'm sure that there's a few riders who would dispute that.
Sasha's others would dispute that. I'll say that he has the best bike handling skills on the track. I've seen the kid ride one-handed wheelies, and he also takes a Roadmaster out on mountain bike trail, so the kid can really handle a bike.
Kirkham said that he'll put the bike into places nobody else will, to the point where he's actually got to tell him to relax.
Sasha's a pretty high-energy guy, and that's one of the things you'll see him try to do today, right, is tame himself down and wait for those right times to make his strategic moves.
Oh, he's having another crash. It looks like some of the riders were trying to do an exchange and maybe just got tangled up there.
I believe that was Delta Upsilon that may have crashed along the back in blue.
You see the yellow flag coming out, so the riders are going to slow down. Yep, somebody at the back of the field just got tangled up, and you know we have 3 or 4 riders that hit the ground right away.
And you can
see
it bunch up right before that wreck, right? You had 3 or 4 riders wide, it just kind of bunched. It's that variation in speed that usually causes those accidents.
Yeah, because they don't have handbrakes and just the coaster brake. A few seconds, you need a few seconds to react because you have to pedal backwards to get the bike to stop. It's kind of counterintuitive.
Still under yellow. 8 laps complete, just over 6 minutes into the race, the 58th running of the men's Little 500. That's Ride DMC that's at the front. The green flag is waved, and we're racing once again.
And then so you have Isaac Neff on Black Key Bowls pulling through, and Mike Shear, arguably our best dressed young man today with the yellow socks, riding for Dodds House, sitting second.
Those two teams are very close to talking to Neff and some of the riders from Dodds House. They're quite close. They will work together today.
That was a pretty good exchange. You know, you see the rider trying to just get back onto the tail end of the lead bunch, and we're going to see him just starting to catch back up. It looks like he's going to make contact, but you know, you want to make that do that as quickly as possible so you don't waste a bunch of energy out there all by yourself. See some signaling going on there between the riders and the coaches.
There are all sorts of different exchanges that can take place. There is bike to bike, and there are rider exchanges. And then if you are exchanging rider to rider, there are different types you can execute. We saw some of that yesterday, Jason.
Yeah, the one team that you'll see stand out a little bit today, Acacia does the Ghost Exchange like Cap Alpha Theta did yesterday. Really exciting. It's actually with no riders touching the bike at one time. There's Phi Delta Theta coming in for their first exchange. He's really moving. That's Matt Kane on the bike. Isaac really countered that as you see Black Key Balls whip around and pick up the pace. Oh, and he's moving. Isaac's turning in a very, very hot lap.
Isaac Neff in the green and white along the back straight, Cutters in yellow, which denotes last year's winner. Once again, nobody is wearing white. The white jersey is usually handed out to the team that wins the spring series.
You know, we saw Isaac, you know, at the front of the bunch really doing a burn there. He thought he was going to come in and do an exchange, and his coach said, no, keep going back out there.
And look who's countering it. You got Sasha Land for the Cutters countering that little acceleration by Isaac.
Well, that's right. Now Isaac is at the front after doing that burn, and so he's already a little bit burned out, and he's got to close the gap.
Oh, this is where it gets fun. And here comes Sasha coming in for the Cutters' first exchange.
The Cutters with the last pit along the far side.
Now, that was a great exchange.
Yeah, and that was a rider exchange to Paul Sigmason.
Yeah, and so Paul can just get right back in there at the back of the lead bunch, and without wasting too much energy.
Sigmason, a part of last year's team, a swimmer formerly here at IU.
So you can just see how important communication is at this point. Line up, get vertical, keep the bike moving, right? A good pickup. And you saw Paul out there almost in the middle of the pack, right? That's something for them to watch throughout the day. And part of the benefit, actually Cutters won in that pit in 1992. Part of the benefit in being the last pit on the straightaway is that there's no pit on the other side of you, right? And you can use a lot more room to go ahead and do your exchange.
Well, not only that, but they're doing their exchange in the headwind section so that when he gets back on the bike and up to speed, he's actually coming out of turn 4 with a tailwind. So it'll make it easier for him to make contact with the lead group again.
We're on lap 14. 200 laps in this race. Just over 50 miles.
You know, something that looks like we have another crash in the pit.
It looks like Beta Theta Pi.
Yeah, maybe they had a bad exchange.
They're still under green at this point.
They're wearing quite a few cinder badges down there in that pit so far.
Yeah, very early on,
Wait a minute.
too.
that was Black Key Bulls. It looks like they're having a little problem there. That's team number 17. Team number 5 is Acacia. Cutters may know something. They're on the front. They look like they're pushing the pace. We've got to monitor this situation. I think Black Key Bulls is a little bit off the front right now. As you can see, Paul taking advantage of that.
Well, and Cutters really, you know, their coach is telling him, go for it, keep going.
Look at Paul go. Paul was a varsity Indiana University swimmer, a great athlete, and now he's translating that into bicycle fitness.
The guys on the Cutters team said that he is a far better rider than he was last year. Last year it was just all athleticism. This year he understands a lot of the nuances of the race.
Here's a Cutters coach giving some instructions to his rider. He's saying tempo, so that means, you know, okay, look, you got a good gap. Just maintain the pace that you're going right now.
Don't burn yourself out. And actually, he's got a half a lap lead on Black Key Bulls, our other favorite right now. In tempo really means don't do too much too fast, right? Ride within yourself, ride some good, strong laps.
So we're likely seeing a strategy that's starting to be executed here by the Cutters.
Yeah, because the best team in the race is a half lap down, right? So you want it, they've got to keep it hot.
Hans, your perspective from down on trackside.
The Cutters are loving the weather right now. They're loving the wind. They're using it to their advantage. They're pushing the gear faster than any other team can do it right now. And Black Key Bulls, I don't know what's happening, but they're falling off. They're falling behind. Cutters is taking advantage of this, and they're opening up the gap. It's just getting shattered, as you can tell. I mean, the pack is getting smaller and smaller every lap. Teams, when they're going to exchange, some of the riders are having trouble catching up. They're getting isolated. They're having trouble catching back up to the pack. When you're out there by yourself, that headwind is really, really hard to make up. But Cutters, they're loving it.
Cutters are riding strong. You've also got some good teams back there in the pack. You've got Phi Delta Theta and Phi Kappa Psi, Acacia, Fiji, you know, all riding strong, really kind of keeping Cutters within their sights right now.
Yeah, well, you know, they're doing a good job of working together, not panicking. Everybody's taking a fair turn at the front. And really, it's Black Key Bulls that are getting put in the hurt locker right now because they're off the back. They're going to miss the race.
Phi Kappa Psi now a distant second to the Cutters. Phi Delta Theta briefly third. Phi Kappa Psi wearing the number 3 in the gray jerseys.
Yeah, I think that's Mike Siegel on the bike there for Phi Kappa Psi. He's one of their veteran riders and top 10 in ITTs. Really what he's trying to do is just control the Cutters' lead right now, which he's done. He's brought him back.
Well, the Cutters did an exchange right there. Now they're kind of looking around, trying to figure out who's going to do what.
Clayton Feldman on the bike for the Cutters.
Yeah, it looks like Clayton is going to continue to keep the pressure on.
It's about being active and not reactive. And Cutters are in a position where they can ride their race when they're getting good gaps and they're riding off the front like that.
That's right. They're dictating the race right now. They're making everybody else chase them and respond to them. They're taking control of the race. We see a little bit of a lull right now. You know, it's kind of everybody's kind of trying to catch their breath after that last section.
What also looked like Feldman was trying to sift through some of the traffic.
Yeah, and what Clayton needs to do for the Cutters right now, he needs to get on a wheel, and that is what he's doing. You don't want to be too far outside or too far in the back. Ideal position is really, third or fourth on the inside. I should say first, second, third, or fourth, but you want to be in the top. There's Ali Camara on the bike for Team Major Taylor. He opened it up last year with 60 laps, and you can see him also starting off strong with over 20 today.
Yeah, the rider from Team Major Taylor is doing a good job of maintaining good pack position, not doing too much time in the wind, but staying out of trouble. And that's really key in this first 20 to 30 laps of the race, to stay out of trouble, don't crash, stay at the front, don't use too much energy.
Hans Arneson is down in the Black Key Bulls pit. Hans?
I'm down in Black Key Bulls pit. It's chaos right now. They're about half a lap down. They were in a crash in turn 2. Isaac's getting back on the bike right now. They're waiting for him to come in. We're going to see if he can make up this gap. It's about half a lap right now.
Well, really the key for Isaac right now is he's just got to not panic too much, because the speed of the main bunch is going to fluctuate, right? They're going to slow down, they're going to speed up, they're going to slow down. The only way he's going to be able to make contact with the lead bunch again is if he just maintains his composure and waits for the bunch to kind of slow down a little bit.
You see Clayton Feldman there. He doesn't want it to slow down. He wants to keep it hot, right?
That's right.
He wants to punish Black Key Bulls for that mistake.
That's right.
A moment ago, you guys mentioned Ali Camara from Team Major Taylor, who rode the first 60-plus laps last year. When I talked to him before the race on Wednesday, he said, we're going to exchange a lot more. Now, to this point, he hasn't.
Well, he's doing a good job, like I mentioned, of maintaining good pack position, staying at the front, staying out of trouble, not doing too much work. Right now, while the Cutters is off the front, he's not taking the responsibility of chasing it down. He's going to leave it up to the other riders, which is probably a smart thing to do this early in the race.
Ali's just got a lot of experience. He's a Southern California kid that knows Rasan Bahati, who has a Pro Tour win under his belt. Team Major Taylor rides a very, very smart race, and I just love the way Ali rides.
Definitely something we haven't seen in the past years is a lot more clothing on the riders. It definitely tells how cold it is out there today.
And so, Dylan, what's like that? What is that for a bike racer? Do you want to keep your legs warm? How do you do that, whether you're wearing shorts or leg warmers?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in a race, especially longer races, you want to try to stay as warm as possible so you don't expend a bunch of extra energy on being cold. So arm warmers, leg warmers, maybe even shoe covers on some really cold, wet, rainy days. So far, the rain's held out for us, but it could change at any moment.
The Cutters still in the lead. Just hitting 26 laps right now.
Looks like Dodds House also riding strong. Phi Kappa Psi.
For people who are watching this race for the first time and hearing the name Cutters and thinking about the movie that immortalized this race, Breaking Away, the Cutters team in Breaking Away, they weren't students here at Indiana University. You have to be a student in order to ride. The Cutters team, Jason, this is a group that split off from the Delta Chi fraternity back in the early 80s and formed their own independent team.
Sure, just a long line of history as we watch this Team Major Taylor exchange. Ollie with another great set. And actually, that's their sprinter getting on the bike.
Kenny Parks. Down to Hans Arneson.
Well, Blackheath Bulls are still trying to catch up right now. It looked like Isaac Neff isn't feeling that great. He threw up right before he got on the bike. He's laying down right now. He's hurting. They're trying to get back into it, but Cutters are laying into it. They're not pulling off. They're staying on the lead, and they're pushing the pace.
That's significant.
You know, Team Major Taylor did a great exchange there. They put their sprinter right back in the front. It was a pretty impressive exchange, exactly how you want to do it. Little conversation going on there. Everybody's trying to jockey for position. They all want to keep the pressure on Blackheath Bulls.
And what you'll see is the riders often have signals between themselves and the coaches in the pit, so they'll plan that out before the race. You'll see them touch their helmets, stick their tongues out, and what that often means is either I'm feeling good, I'm coming out, get somebody ready, or I want to stay out there, give me a couple more laps.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. You know, a lot of the professional teams are now using two-way radios between all the riders and the team directors, and it's become very sophisticated. But you know, here at the Little 500, it's lap cards and secret symbols.
And there's a number of teams that have asked about radios, and actually, you know, trying to keep this authentic. You know, 58 years, there's no radios allowed in this race. We're going all with pit boards, whiteboards, and signals back to the pit.
We're hitting almost lap 30 here at the 58th running of the men's Little 500. Stay with us for more of our coverage right now. The Cutters in the lead, looking for a repeat championship, their 9th. Welcome back to the 58th running of the men's Little 500 from Bill Armstrong Stadium on the campus of Indiana University. The culmination of the world's greatest college weekend. Right now, Cutters in yellow. You've got Team Major Taylor in black at the front of the peloton. Dodds House as well. There's a group of 4 or 5 teams that are in contention at this point. Last year, it was the Cutters that won the men's Little 500 for a record-tying 8th time. We talked to Alex Bishop, the man who crossed the finish line first last year, about that experience as well as some of this year's competitors to get his feel as they look toward their unprecedented 9th title.
The history behind this team is unreal. You know, we have all sorts of resources that have been around for you know, longer than I can even imagine.
This is so much deeper than you ever thought it was because there's so much history, and you know, everyone's there to back you up, give you advice, you know, tips, the whole race plan, and we have so much alumni that like the stuff that like other people are worrying about, we don't have to worry about because all that stuff's done. You know, we just have to worry about going out there and winning it.
I think we go out there, we're focused. You know, at the beginning of the school year and getting training and getting the body back into shape. And then, you know, as track time comes through February, I think, you know, we come out here, we focus. Every day we come to the track and we learn something new. We try to improve on, you know, the day before.
There's a lot of luck that comes into this race, but we work really, really hard. And I mean, we have the goal in mind of winning it, and a lot of things have to happen.
Your exchanges have to be good. Really, it just comes down to really knowing your enemy, you know? You gotta know exactly how good, like, the other teams that can beat you are. You gotta know when they're going, when they're not going, you know? It's a way more mind game than one would think. But the thing is, everyone's gotta ride the same bike, you know? It's the same gear. And really, even if you put different parts on it, there's really not that much of a difference, you know? It just comes down to who could move their legs the fastest, the longest.
You put the great equalizer in there, and everyone carries the same bike race day, and it's just whoever can carry the red line the most. It's the team that crosses the finish line the most. Every year is the team that wanted it the most.
The psychological edge is important, just because everybody rides, you know, the same bike and everything is so equal. I think any edge you can get, psychological or physical, is really important.
You got to be proactive and you got to be reactive to different things that happen in the race. And if you do those two things all day, you make the race and you make other teams kind of wonder what you're doing and what other people are doing. And, you know, it's perfect races. You're crossing the line first, bottom line.
Make people race on your terms. You know, go out there and try some things, and you know, don't let other teams dictate where you're going to be riding and, you know, where you're going to be when all is said and done. It's going to be the usual suspects, and I think everybody is aware of who they need to race on race day. Perfect scenario would be, you know, us getting to the front without any major incidents, anybody wrecking in front of us, and then the only thing we can really control is being there on the last lap with the leaders. And I think if that happens, then I don't think there'd be a problem crossing the line first.
Last year, Cutters tied Delta Chi for the all-time win list with 8. And Jason, we alluded to it very briefly that Cutters were actually born out of the Delta Chi house.
Yeah, there's a lot of tradition there. The Risingers were coaching the team in the 70s. And Delta Chi had won 3 years in a row. They had won in 1970. I believe it was 3 years in a row, 1979, 1980, 1981. The Cutters, Adam Giles, Chris Gutowski formed a team the next year and won the race their first year. And you always see a sign that was made before that race, and it said, "God says, go Cutters." Cutters have just had a long line of tradition after that, and everything that they said around the coaches helping and people like Jim Kirkham, Jason Fowler, that's really kind of what makes that team. It's a lot of history.
Jason Sonneborn alongside Dylan Casey. Judd Surratt here calling the 58th running of the men's Little 500. We're at lap 41. It's a 200-lap race.
Just a few minutes ago, we saw the Black Key Bulls actually get lapped by the lead peloton. So, unfortunately, it seems like they're out of the race. But, you know, that's what happens when you're not at the front, you have some sort of mishap, the race can be over.
A huge story that was unfolding, and as Hans Arneson reported for us, that was gigantic, that their best rider, arguably the best rider here on the track, Isaac Neff, ill as he got off the bike.
You can see Figams on the front there. Not going fast enough to warn there go the Figams, but riding along fairly well.
Cutter's just continuing to force the pace, really taking control, dictating the strategy that's going on out there. Pulling through, and he's looking around saying, okay, come on. Now I did a pull, now it's your turn.
Yeah, you can see him 3 wide. With Faisai on the inside. You just really, actually, and this is what happens in the race. You see him start really fast, you see a lot of wrecks, and then in the middle you kind of have a lull. And it's a matter of who reacts when and who wants to do what with the race.
We're hitting lap 43 right now. Team Major Taylor getting ready to exchange. Ali Kamara ready to jump back on the bike. Delta Tau Delta also just making a change.
Well, it looks like a little miscommunication there, but it doesn't. And actually, Kenny Parks is on the bike for Team Major Taylor. What he likely did, he didn't like his position. He didn't like his advantage that he was going to give it to Ali. So he's going to stay out there until he can get in the position to help his teammate.
Yeah, because he wants to do a good exchange. You don't want to put your teammate back in there totally off the back of the pack.
For Team Major Taylor, they have all of their riders who are returning, so they have a level of experience. This is only the 8th time that they have competed in the Little 500.
Yeah, and when I look at Team Major Taylor and Kenny Parks out there, they're coached by Ken Nowakowski, who is actually the Marion cycling track coach, and they just look like track riders. If you look at Kenny Parks, he's a big guy with big arms, and he really knows how to accelerate and throw that bike.
Wall Street. Maybe it's time to make some money.
That's Courtney Bishop, who helped found the team here. He's a businessman from Indianapolis. And he said he wanted to try and increase the level of diversity here at the men's Little 500.
Wall Street's some sort of code that obviously means something to the team that we don't know about. Maybe it's time to show the money.
We'll have to try and decipher that by watching the way he rides. Cutter's making an exchange in the back pit by turn 3.
I'm still trying to figure out that Wall Street, you know, with the way the market's doing, So I don't know, does it mean right in the back of the pack right now?
See, the guy who might know is Dan Houchins for Dotthaus. He's going to be working for Morgan Stanley after he graduates in wealth management.
Yeah, and that's something I remember about riding here, and then what guys went on to do after the race. A lot of the people that trade on the Chicago Board of Options Exchange or in New York, they come and recruit people like Little 500 riders because they're very committed, they're very dedicated and motivated, and also competitive, right? So it's just the right kind of people to come and work for your companies.
Well, you know, we see Cutters on the front there really forcing the pace, and that's going to make it even more difficult for Team Major Taylor to do an exchange because their rider can't get into position.
There was somewhat of a surprise on the board, and that was Alpha Tau Omega. No offense to Hans Arneson, but I think even he would be surprised at how well they've competed to this point.
Well, you know, I'm counting here, and I only see 7 or 8 teams on the lead lap now.
Looks like a little fake burn by Kenny Parks on Team Major Taylor. He's kind of toying with the field.
Well, it looks as though Team Major Taylor is about ready to make an exchange.
He's really riding like a track rider right now, trying to figure out what he wants to do, looking around, accelerating, bluffing. Looks like one team's reacting. That's Ride DMC.
A lot of action going on in the pit there.
You got to give a lot of credit to Ride DMC. They just look to be, they're on the offensive. They're always off the front. They're always moving. He might be coming in for an exchange. You can see his teammate out.
This is the first year they have ridden together as a group, formerly again AE Pi. They said they wanted to try and form a team because there were some questions about the standing of the fraternity here at Indiana, and they wanted to create a team not only so they could still ride, but it was something that they felt they would be proud to represent.
And I really do think they should be proud. That was Michael Redder that just got off the bike for him. He's really a leader here in Indiana and with the Little 500. He's on the Riders Council. He just does a lot to help younger riders improve their skills, right, and make this a safe, good race.
Everybody prepares differently. He had said, I saw in the Indiana Daily Student, that the whole team would sit down and watch on any given Sunday the Al Pacino speech near the end to try and get inspired.
Team Major Taylor finally coming in to do an exchange.
So all that bluffing, moving back and forth, and he ends up kind of coming in off the back of the pack.
Yeah, not the best exchange. I mean, he's going to have to spend a little extra energy there. You know, you can see the gap that he's got to close to make it back up to the bunch.
You didn't see a lot of high fives in the TMT pit there.
No.
Ollie Kamara wearing black for Team Major Taylor, and last year, guys, he said, I don't think we made one good exchange, and it probably cost us the race.
Yeah, exchanges are just so critical. So, you know, the good teams, they start practicing in February, right? And then they take that down to spring break. They're just so critical for the race.
He made up that ground in fairly short order. Is that Phi Gamma Delta on the back straight? Trying to make a little bit of move?
There go the Phi Gams.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to do an exchange here, and they actually have a pretty good pit location given that they're right at the exit at turn 4, so it means they're going to exchange into a tailwind.
For Phi Gamma Delta, they're wearing red and white. They've just made an exchange. This is their 56th Little 500. They have 6 wins, but they have not had one since 1995, but another storied program and a powerhouse here for many years.
And we see a little bouncing around, a little wobbling down in the gutter there, but everybody held it together.
Hans Arneson has drifted over to Team Major Taylor.
That's right, Ali's back on the bike. Is he gonna ride a lot of laps for you again like last year?
We're gonna see, you know, we're trying to spread it out. We got a pretty balanced team. I think we're gonna see what we can do here. We're gonna see what we can get done.
All right, he's yelling out Wall Street here down in the pits. I'm not sure. What does Wall Street mean? Does that mean show me the money?
It could at the end of the race. It could at the end of the race.
All right, thank you.
Courtney's worried our live telecast here on HDNet, he will not disclose. He's worried
That's
other
level
teams
do you
are
see
watching.
the other card? It said Jefferson.
Maybe that means dead presidents.
It's all about the money. 53 laps gone by here at the 58th running of the men's Little 500. There you see Ali Kamara.
Oh, it's just fun. You know, when alumni like Courtney come back and they're a part of these young guys' lives, trying to help them along and create teams. You can see he's pretty animated down there. He's rather fired up.
One of the things Courtney said was that he felt because there was no diversity here, and he would ask people, well, why there aren't more African Americans or black riders, and he would hear, well, black kids just don't cycle. And he said, those are buzzwords for me, that when I hear that, I want to make sure that people don't confuse don't with can't.
And so here Ali comes in, and he certainly can ride a bike. He got a huge gap, and so that's really, that's a tutorial on what you want to do for your teammate, right? And unfortunately, the guy getting on, couldn't get on the pedals right away, but that's exactly what you want to do, bring in a gap for your teammate.
That's right, and he can jump right back into the bunch there and not waste a bunch of energy. It's obvious that Team Major Taylor spent a lot of time over the winter working on their exchanges. Starting to see a couple of raindrops out there. Who knows what's going to happen here with the weather?
How will that affect the cinder track here?
It doesn't hurt the track that much. There will be ruts that form. Really what happens, I think the biggest danger is the cinders come flying up in your face. And by the end of the day, you'll have a black face. It's tough to see. So it really is, it impacts safety.
Cutter's now trying to make up a little bit of distance. Cutter's wearing yellow. They're in first. Phi-Psi in silver in second. And then you see Dodds House third with the yellow and orange. Phi Gamma Delta in red and white. But it's a fairly sizable peloton as we're about at lap 57.
Great exchange by the Cutters right there.
Hans Arneson, you've got more stories from us from TMT.
Well, when I was talking to them before the race, they said they want it to rain. They love this weather, and they're out here and they're loving it.
The veteran guys must.
Well, you know what happens when you add elements like cold and rain and wind, it starts to demoralize some of the guys. And so if you can actually take advantage of the fact that they're demoralized, you're automatically putting yourself in an advantage. I remember sitting at the start line of a race. It was pouring rain, World Championships with Lance Armstrong. He turns to me and says, how you feeling, Dylan? I said, well, it's pouring rain. I'm not really that excited. He's like, don't worry about it. 25% of the whole field just quit, and the race hasn't even started. So that's how you can take a situation like we have today where it's really cold and windy and it could possibly rain and really use it to your advantage. These guys have definitely got the right attitude. They spent a lot of time over the winter working on their exchanges, and it's really showing today.
Dodds House just made an exchange. Dodds House last won this race in 2005. They have won it twice. The previous time, 1998.
What's really amazing to see is that the weather certainly hasn't depleted the crowd here that's showing up here. It's just an amazing crowd, really excited about this race, ready to party. Unfortunately, looks like it's just going to get a little bit wet.
No different than a little college football.
Yeah, that's right. It's a great crowd out there.
This stadium was built to house a crowd of this size. The stadium has been around, or was not the original place where the race was held, and this is also the place where the Indiana University soccer team plays its games. As the rain is starting to fall a little bit harder, and it looks like it's coming out of the north. The north and the west.
And so this is Bill Armstrong Stadium in Dillon. There's just not a whole lot of other stadiums built that I've seen, and I don't know about you, that are built to hold this amount of people to watch a bike race.
No, I mean, it's actually pretty cool because it's such a great event, but the whole community, the school has put so much resources and energy behind supporting it. It's fantastic to see a stadium like this for cycling.
Guys, we touched on it briefly yesterday in the women's race. The budgets and the money that these teams try and generate in order to race. And for some, it's a closely guarded secret. Sarah Ricci of one of the women's teams said we went around with a dorm and we raised only $1,500, but that was still a record. How much money are these teams generating, Jason, and what are their primary uses?
The fraternities actually raise probably the most because of their alumni base, and I think budgets in the range of $10,000 to $15,000, believe it or not. So what will they use that money for? They'll use it for equipment, spare wheels, tires, obviously clothing. Winter clothing is important. When you first start riding, you don't have all the gear that you need. So it gets you going, it gets you off to the right foot. Then they also use it on training trips. You'll see the teams do 2 to 3 training trips during the year, one during Christmas break, one during spring break, and that's really where they learn exchanges, get part of that teamwork, and also gain fitness.
The other thing that amazes me, 2 of the Cutters riders actually had knee injuries that they are trying to get over as they looked ahead to this race, but these are all students at Indiana, and it's not as though, and because this is an intramural event, they're not scholarship athletes that are getting treatment like a football player would or a basketball player would. These guys have to do it on their own.
You know, it's interesting to hear you talk about how some of the teams have training camps and they actually go away to work on their exchanges and stuff like that. And I'm sure getting away from some of the local weather is a big advantage as well.
Yeah, and you see all these people behind the pits. It's interesting. You know, it's not just the riders on the training trips. There's also, they have cooks there, and they have coaches there. They have people to drive the car so they can ride behind the motor. There's a whole lot of people that want to be a part of this, and what it does is it builds a community of students around the teams, right? And they're focused on something like Little 500, which is really incredible.
Well, it just shows how serious and how dedicated these riders are and how methodical they are in their approach to actually showing up today and ready to win the race.
Dodds House is coming through on the inside, currently in the lead along with the Cutters team. Alpha Tau Omega in purple and white in third, and then you see the Black Key Bulls, but we believe that they're a lap down.
Yeah, and that's Daniel Houchins on the bike for Dodds House. I jokingly asked him, how many more Little Fives are you going to ride? This is his last year. Seems like he's been here forever. He's really put a dent in the race.
So I'm counting 9 teams on the lead lap there in the front bunch. You see, obviously there's more than 9 riders, but that just shows you how much lap traffic. And like yesterday, we saw that kind of come into play and affect the race. It's going to be really important that these riders, the 9 lead teams, stay out of trouble and stay out of traffic, especially as they're doing exchanges coming up into the end of the race.
Jason, we saw earlier when Hans Arneson was talking with Courtney Bishop, the coach of Team Major Taylor. Can you also talk about the coach that is currently working for Dodds House, Glenn Spizak, because his reputation is a guy who likes to lay it all on the line every time.
Yeah, Dodds House, you can never quite figure out their strategy, and that's the fun thing about Dodds House is that they're going to attack early and they're going to ride an aggressive race. Glenn's been the coach for a long time. He's just a great leader for those young men. And so Dodds House is a dormitory on campus, but it's a dorm where they actually recruit and house great bike racers.
Dan Houchins was a part of the 05 team, and we see Team Major Taylor making another exchange as we're hitting lap 66. Houchins had said, Jason, that the team that he raced on in 05 was very close-knit, and they had an A-grade rider in Craig Lukens, but the team is a little bit different this year, not quite as close-knit.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, one of their best riders, Mike Shear, actually lives with Isaac Neff, who rides for Black Key Bulls. So maybe that's what he was referring to. I'm not sure. The team that they won with was an incredible team. It was Craig Lukens and Kevin Moore, and they won it the right way by being a team and by putting it all on the line. And Craig won a sprint.
Alpha Tau Omega still hanging in there. They are currently on the lead lap and at the front of the peloton, wearing the purple and white. They won the race thanks to Hans Arneson lapping the field in 2006. They qualified 26th for the race. Hans Arneson, how's your team doing? How do you like the way they're performing here?
I'm loving it. They're out there in the lead and they're being aggressive. Steve Zimba's on the bike right now. I rode with him in 2006. He had a great year. He was our rookie rider that year, but he's got a ring on his finger. He's been out here. The last time he was on this track, he won the race. He knows what it's like to be out there in first, and he knows what it's like to win.
Be honest, are you a little bit surprised with the way they've ridden thus far?
I'm not. I think their quals position was a little deceiving. 26th place, that's not as good as they are. They just wanted to get into this race because of what happened the year before. They didn't even qualify. So I'm just happy that they're in it, and they're proving that they're better than 26th place.
Looks like Phi Gamma Delta's coming in to do an exchange.
The Cutters currently in the lead. Cutters wearing yellow. It looks to be Eric Hamilton who is on the bike. He missed the first 2 series events in the spring due to knee surgery. And he's a guy who actually could not race last year because he wanted to switch teams and go from Team Cinzano, which is not racing this year, to the Cutters team.
So Jason, explain, how do you change teams like that? How do you affiliate with a specific team if you're not in the fraternity? Or if it's not a team that's a fraternity team?
Well, first, to change teams, you actually have to sit out a year before you can ride for another team in the race. So you can't just swap teams every year.
Right.
And then what the independent teams do is they obviously have to recruit a little bit differently than a fraternity would. They have access to a larger group of people, people that are not a part of their house. And then dormitories like Dodds and like Wright Cycling, those are people that they'll recruit and they'll actually live in the house, and that's how it starts.
But there is a real recruitment process.
Oh, there absolutely is a real recruitment process, because what you'll do is you'll look for junior racers. And there's stories of the Risingers going out and recruiting Wayne Stetina and others to come and ride for those fraternities. So you'll go out to races and you'll look for junior racers, people who are 16, 17, 18 years old. You'll encourage them to come to IU and ride for your team. You'll talk about Little Five.
7, maybe 9 teams still in contention. At the top of the peloton here at the 58th running of the men's Little 500. Stay with us here on HCNet for more of our coverage. We're hitting lap 74 here at the 58th running of the men's Little 500. Still a large contingent that has an opportunity to win this race, but just a moment ago, Jason, we saw a wreck there in turn 2 that could affect our leaderboard.
Yeah, and it's not what we want to see. It looks like the Phi Gam rider, again, he rubbed that front wheel. You can see a big pile up in the back. And really that puts them 3/4 of a lap down. It makes their day awfully tough.
We have just jumped back to racing with the green flag. And while we have the opportunity, you might remember that Team Major Taylor, last year, their top rider, Ali Kamara, completed more than half of the 200 laps by himself. This year, Major Taylor, a different team. Having finished second in qualifications, they have their eyes on taking down the Cutters this year.
Ali Kamara, and we are Team Major Taylor.
Yeah, we got some confidence, I guess, this year compared to last year, more so. But still, this team, or this year, it's a lot deeper field. There's probably 10 teams that could be on the lead lap. The Cutters are obviously the favorite right now. They've got the overall strength, as they always do, but there's only one person on the bike at the end, so we think we can match with them and hopefully come out on top this year.
Yeah, he was an African-American cyclist at the turn of the century, one of the most prominent cyclists in the world.
Well, Courtney Bishop, our coach today, he started off a team in memory of Major Taylor, and they came in dead last. They were a team that aimed to bring diversity to the Little 500. Now, fast forward about 10 years later, early 2000, based on that experience, they started at Team Major Taylor, and they based the experience from that team as well as some of the support from the alumni. And that's how the team actually got started, to introduce diversity to this race. And over the years, it really has become more and more diverse. And today, as you can see from the crowd right here, you have 2 white guys, a black guy, an Asian guy, and we actually have last year we had a Hispanic guy on the team too. So I don't think you can find a team as diverse as Team Major Taylor. The name Major Taylor, he was just a very prominent black cyclist in the 1890s. That was a terrible time to be a black athlete. He broke so many world records, and today he's just a forgotten person. And so we feel like being part of this team, we try to bring the spirit of Major Taylor back into the race, where anyone can just achieve something. Achieve something if they put their hearts and minds to it. From last year, most people would know that we probably had the worst exchanges in the whole race. We've just proved in quals that we can exchange the bike, so I think we got that out of the way. So that's one less thing to worry about.
We got the last pit on the front row now, so we don't have a back end, line, so we can do bike to bikes and go really fast. And just the Cutters had that last year. I keep going back to them, but they won it, so we try to, I mean, they know what they're doing, so.
I mean, I think last year we were really physically able to do it, but I think mentally, I think psychologically, that got the best of us because our experience wasn't as great. But I think this year, from that experience, I think we'll be able to help propel us to the victory.
Win or go home.
Win or go home?
Win or go home.
We're coming for you this year. And we're going to be drafting off you, but you probably knew that already. And we're going to win.
Cutters, I drink your milkshake.
It's on you, Alphonse. Do something.
Oh my God. They finished second in qualifications, a group that raced together last year. Their best finish, second, back in 2003, and that is their best rider, Ali Kamara. And there you see the way this race was qualified, Sigma Alpha Mu, with the pole sitter, Team Major Taylor second, Phi Kappa Psi third, and a pretty strong group. And it's Delta Upsilon that is still hanging there with the leaders. Delta Upsilon wearing the blue jerseys.
You see Alpha Tau Omega on the front. I think that still is Steve Zimba. Phi Kappa Psi. I think that's Mike Siegel on the bike for Phi Kappa Psi. I think he is their best rider. He's got 2 years of experience.
Steve Zimba's sister, Lauren Zimba, one is a part of the KD team.
So there you saw something interesting, right? You saw the tongue out of the mouth. So I think we're learning a couple of the teams, the tongue out of the mouth may mean an exchange coming in the next lap. Here comes the Cutters, and they got a bunch of traffic.
Guys, as we're almost hitting the halfway point of this race, we're through 82 laps at this point. How does your strategy start to shift?
With so many teams on the lead lap, I think there's a couple out there that like to see the lead group dwindle. And I think those teams that can do it, I think they're the Dodds. I think it's Cutters. And what you're going to see is they're going to try to lose teams like Team Major Taylor and Light Cycling and others that aren't as aggressive as they are. So try to increase your chances by dropping a couple of the teams, not allowing so many teams to stay on the lead lap.
Alpha Tau Omega heading in for an exchange. That'll move Cutters back into the lead. Cutters in yellow, Dodds House in orange and yellow. And you just saw Alpha Tau Omega in the white and purple jerseys. Team Major Taylor in black, Phi Kappa Psi in gray.
So according to intelligence, we're down to 8 teams on the lead lap right now. So the Cutters' strategy of trying to weed out the weaker riders looks like it's starting to work.
One of the other teams that is still on the lead lap, Delta Sigma Pi. They had a women's entrant yesterday. It's a business fraternity here on campus. And once again, it looks like they could be a contender.
Yeah, Delta Sigma Pi just riding awfully strong. Same with Phi Kappa Psi. You know, Phi Psi is riding like they have that tradition today, and I'm really, really impressed by that.
Breaking Away, the movie that immortalized this race, was written by a member of Phi Kappa Psi, and the interesting thing is they have the trophy from the movie from 1979. They have not won a race since.
It's been a while. They're hungry.
That trophy sits in their dining room, but they have won this race 7 times.
Just amazing to hear about the teams that have won this race so many times. It just really speaks to the legacy and how important that is to actually being successful here.
Here you see our leaderboard. '86 laps complete, 200 in this men's Little 500. Yesterday it was Delta Gamma winning. It's a 100-lap race. It was their first ever victory. Guys, we've talked about a lot of some of the individual riders here in the race, and especially with this being 200 laps, it will take more than one rider most of these guys will say it's going to take an entire team to be able to pull this off.
Yeah, and that's really the fun thing about the Little 500 is you can't do it by yourself. You know, you have to do the exchanges in the race, and you have to rely on your teammates when you're not there. So it's a very, trusting team-building relationship.
With some of the teams that we've also called out in the lead lap and on the lead peloton, I think if, let's say, Delta Sigma Pi won this race, I think it would catch everybody by surprise, but it has been many years since a dark horse has won here at this event. Down to Hans Arnesen.
Well, it's that point in the race when some of the top teams are really starting to show themselves. Some of the weaker teams are having trouble catching back up to the pack when they're doing exchanges. It's because of this wind. Right now, when you're isolated out there by yourself and you hit that headwind on the backstretch, you can't catch up. It's just impossible for some of the weaker teams to turn over that hard gear and catch back up. Stronger teams are able to do it, and they're showing their strength right now.
Some of those weaker teams, in your estimation, Hans, are?
Well, we've got 8 on the lead lap. I'd say all the other ones are some of the weaker teams.
The last time a dark horse really shocked everybody here at the race is Dodds House is pulling to the front at lap 89, probably Sigma Phi Epsilon back in 1999. And if talking to Alex Enan, Jason, he said there was a crash late in the race which freed them up for the victory.
Yeah, that was a year when we had a lot of teams on the lead lap, and there was a crash in the 180s. Actually, and the young man that won it for Sigma Phi Epsilon was Steve Kopak, and he was he had a lot of confidence, and he was a strong sprinter, and he showed it, right? And surprised a lot of the stronger teams. So you look at a team like Delta Sigma Pi today, and you wonder if they stay around, can they get their first victory?
Right Cycling, Ride DMC Cutters, 1, 2, 3 in the peloton at lap 90.
Yeah, and you talk about Ride DMC coming from the AE Pi legacy, right? And AE Pi was a fraternity that had won in the 80s, and they're out there representing, I guess, their old house very strongly today.
Yesterday we talked about strategy in the women's race versus the men's race, the women's race being 100 laps shorter. How dramatically different will we see it today? We saw a lot of women go very hard with the pedal down, but this is so much longer that I would imagine it really has to differ.
Well, the men they adjust their training. They do longer training rides, they do longer intervals, they do longer training sessions, and they're prepared to do 200 laps.
Dylan, as a cyclist for many years, how have you seen the training change, really across decades?
Well, it's very methodical now. I mean, a lot of the top riders use very specialized training devices. They all have coaches, nutritionists. It's very serious. It's big business now. So the athletes take it very serious. And that's actually one of the things that I've always been very impressed by the Little 500 is how serious a lot of these riders take it, and the fact that they spend so much time and energy training and actually dedicating themselves to preparing for race day. It's actually very, very impressive, especially coupled with the life of being a student and all the requirements that has.
And a non-scholarship student at that. I think that bears repeating, that these are all just your average, everyday Indiana University student, not on any scholarship, but putting in the dedication and the sacrifice to do it on their own and with their respective teams.
And you see a lot of them come, you mentioned not on scholarship. Well, Paul Sigmason was a varsity swimmer before this, and you see a lot of them come in with, cross-country backgrounds or swimming backgrounds, and being able to translate that to bicycle racing. And the difference in training, what Dylan does is he was always focused on wattage, right? He had multiple gears. He was focused on wattage. What these guys focus on a lot is intensity and intervals, which you can measure by heart rate.
We just saw a crash there, and that was a crash of fatigue. I think he just kind of overlapped wheels, wasn't paying attention. You could see the look on his face. He's just got, all the energy sucked out of him. Fortunately, it didn't cause a big chain reaction, but we see Cutters here really putting on the pressure. Really trying to separate the pack. There's four riders, and if they take this opportunity to actually separate themselves from the bunch, they could make this a 4-rider race. You see the ATO rider there on the front of the bunch trying to close the gap, and it looks like Team Major Taylor is really going to take advantage of this, or they're going to do an exchange here.
You see, in the Dodds House rider, they all followed Sasha out for that exchange. Now TMT's going in for an exchange. Delta Sigma Pi, they're all countering off of cutters right now.
Kenny Park's about ready to do a bike-to-bike exchange with Ali Kamara. Dylan, we had a chance to discuss this as a group after the race last night. There are a lot of accomplished riders who are out there, but as a guy who has raced internationally in the Tour de France, who has raced in the Olympics, what sort of level do you have to achieve to get to that height?
Well, you know, it takes a long time, a lot of training. There's probably roughly 15 to 20 Americans racing at the Pro Tour level at any given time. But, you know, riders get their start this way, and they really get a taste of what it takes to prepare themselves and dedicate themselves, dealing with all of the pressures and all the demands of actually being a full-time athlete. How do you deal with all the other things in your life that can impact your training schedules, girlfriends, you know, final exams? That's what it takes. How do you overcome all of those things are what really determine whether or not you're going to be successful, on top of having good talent, which is the other kind of necessary component, obviously.
Jason, there have been riders in this race that have competed in the Olympics.
Yeah, I think one of the best stories of all time was, I think Wayne Stetina was in the 1976 Olympics, and they asked him what he was going to do after he rode in the Olympics. He said, I'm going to go to Indiana University, ride Little 500, and he actually rode and won for Delta Chi. And we see that today. A lot of these guys, they'll start out at Category 4, Category 3, Category 5 ranks, and they'll move up. They'll move up to be elite bike racers someday, and it's really fun to watch. And you see people like Isaac Neff and Sasha Land. They'll compete in United States Cycling Federation races. They'll also go to collegiate nationals and compete. So it's a big part of their life that starts here.
It looks like the pace has slowed along the backstretch as we're about ready to hit lap 98 here, almost halfway through the 58th running of the men's Little 500. Why have we slowed?
When it slows, somebody wants to go on the offensive, right? And so you see Cutters following Sigma Pi's wheel out. You know, when you're a good team, you don't want a slow race, you know, and you don't want a big pack. So that's going to be the fun thing to watch. Is you have a number of teams with a lot of balance and a lot of strength, you know, trying to lose the other 6 or 7 teams that are on the lead lap with them right now.
Yesterday we did not see many crashes in the women's race, the 21st running of the women's Little 500. A few more today.
You see bikes piled up on top of each other there.
Yeah, you know, I think it's just the pressure, you know, and the weather and everything is really kind of creating a lot of these crashes that we've been seeing. Like I said, you know, that rider, that was almost a crash of fatigue.
We brought up the topic of bike control, and for some of these riders, Sasha Land in particular, Jim Kirkham said he won't go down if you bump him. I'm sure for a lot of the other less experienced riders, that won't be the case.
Yeah, it's all about experience in bike handling. Actually, yesterday we saw that happen during the women's race. A woman came up on the inside and touched a woman on the outside, and the woman on the outside went down. So it's about being strong on the bike, right, and being powerful and in control.
Yeah, and you want to be comfortable, you know. That's part of the challenge of doing these races, is like getting used to riding around with other riders really close to you, being able to respond to them, balance. You know, you kind of lean on them every once in a while. In fact, you'll see, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the Team Major Taylor riders, since they do have a lot of track experience, actually employing some of those skills and tactics out here with a little bit of headbutting or maybe a little shoulder rubbing.
How rough can it get there in the Peloton, boys?
There's been some bloody noses in my past.
You got to tell that story.
Well, you know, I think there's always somebody that gets a little frustrated. You know, there's kind of an unwritten rule that you don't take your hands off the bars, and anything in between that is okay. But sometimes, you know, tempers flare, and they don't always stick to the rules.
And if you don't like the way someone rides and they're not as comfortable as you are on the bike, you don't want to let them in. You're not going to sit behind them. And so what do? Well, you throw them a little elbow. You give them a jostle. I've seen, you know, you snot on them when they're sitting behind you. You do these little things to help you have an advantage.
Yeah.
I'm sure that must get a few guys rattled.
Yeah, that'd get you rattled. Really, you don't want to lose control of the bars, like Dylan mentioned. So you have to keep that good form and keep centered on top of the bars.
Team Major Taylor in black in the lead along the backstretch. Dodds House in the orange and yellow, second as they start to sift through some of the traffic. Cutters in yellow making its way along the inside. But some of the other favorite teams that we talked about have fallen off, and others that we failed to mention have risen. Phi Delta Theta, who we thought would be in contention along with Black Key Bulls, have faltered here in the first 100 laps.
Yeah, and one of those teams that's really rising today is Right Cycling. You can see them; they're the team following out Black Key Bulls right now. They're wearing orange on their sides and black on their back. They're coming in for an exchange, just riding a great race today. See him coming in for a bike exchange there on the backstretch.
For Right Cycling, they only have one rider who has ever competed in this race before, and that's John Pollock.
Well, we saw that rider. He had all kinds of chain ring marks all over him. It looks like maybe he was caught up in a crash and the bike actually fell on top of him.
Chain tattoo, rookie marks. He's got them all up his leg.
Yeah, it looks like he hurt his hand.
That was Nick Savinsky for Phi Delta. He is an experienced rider. I don't like to see him down there in pain. He came in. He started riding mountain bikes. He went to Bloomington North here in town. He started riding mountain bikes when he was 14, 15 years old, and he was recruited by Phi Delta Theta.
Judd Surratt joined along with Jason Sonneborn, an all-star rider here in this event, a Bloomington native and a graduate here at Indiana University, alongside Dylan Casey, a former U.S. Olympian, a guy who's competed along with Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France and several European bike races across the world, across the globe. And we're joined also trackside by Hans Arneson, arguably the greatest rider ever who has competed here. He won last in 2006 with Alpha Tau Omega when he completely lapped the field. And when we spoke to him this morning, and our producer Daryl Ewald asked, when did you know you had it in the bag? And he said, as soon as I went a lap up.
Considering that there was still 160 laps to go, that's a good, bold statement, but he pulled it off for sure.
And apparently he drew all sorts of attention when he decided to come back and help his sister coach. The other women who were competing, when they saw Hans Arneson step onto the track to help Gamma Phi Beta, everybody was wondering, what's he doing here? Who's he helping? He was helping his sister. We're at lap 106. This is 200 laps. This event will help generate more money towards working students here at Indiana University. That's what the event was founded upon. It was first presented to the Indiana University Foundation back in 1950 by Howdy Wilcox, and the first race took place in 1951. It is modeled exactly after the Indianapolis 500, 200 laps, 33 teams, 11 rows of 3. Each team that you'll see today has 4 riders. They can be, in this case for the men's race, fraternities, dorms, or independent cycling crews. And Jason, interestingly enough, when the Cutters team broke off from Delta Chi, they generated an abundance of new independent teams that they hadn't seen before. It was an idea that independent teams could actually win this race. It doesn't have to be a fraternity, or it doesn't have to be a dorm.
Yeah, that's right. And today you see really strong independent teams, like Black Key Bulls, like the Cutters. You've also seen a number of teams win that didn't win in the past. It was Gafambi. It was also the Corleones. It was teams that used to be fraternities that went out and started independent teams.
You see Cutters there on the front. I mean, they've just spent so much time on the front. They definitely are going to win the, most laps led award. It'll be curious to see if it actually pays off, but they're making the race. They've taken ownership of this race, and it's showing today.
The Cutters team qualified 13th. Cutters wearing yellow.
when HDNet's covering the race, you want to be on the front. We used to have a sign that said ESPN. That was back when ESPN did the coverage, and it just meant get on the front, right? You need the FaceTime, and it also helps because you stay out of trouble. So today, it's HDNet.
That's right, little TV time.
The Cutters actually have a rider in Eric Young who finished third in ITTs who is not competing today, and they have essentially a rookie in Clayton Feldman who is riding for the Cutters team, who went through the rookie training but did not race as a part of the team last year that won.
And it just really goes to show the overall strength of the Cutters, right? When you have five guys in the top 10 or 15 in ITTs, and what it is they're competitive against each other and they help each other get better. And so that's why you want a lot of people riding for your team or for your house. There's Jason Fowler in the pit for the Cutters. He's a guy that's ridden for Gafami and also for the Cutters. He picked up a win for the Cutters in, I believe, 2004 when Chris Fargo took the line.
$90 laps to go. Make it 89 now, 111. Phi Kappa Psi in silver leading the pack right now. Wright Cycling in the orange and blue. Just behind him, Ride DMC in third. Cutters in the yellow jersey fourth. In pink, Delta Sigma Pi. Dodds House, orange and yellow, riding there in sixth. And the ATOs in purple and white. You've got a gaggle of riders still in contention.
You can see that Phi Psi rider there. That's Dave Schwer. He gave a little wiggle of his elbow, trying to get the next guy to pull through.
Yeah, that's right. You know, we see Cutters back on the front. You know, they continually go up there, take a turn, pull off, look at the other riders, look for a good spot to kind of slot right back in there because he doesn't want to spend too much time out in the wind, especially after they exit turn 2 into the headwind. So he's already slotted right back into their fourth wheel.
It does feel like, guys, that the wind has died just a little bit.
Yeah, you know, the flags aren't completely sideways like they were earlier today, and it looks like the rain is held off so far.
Ugly spring weather here in Bloomington, southern Indiana. 40-degree temperatures. We've had some light rain, and for most of the race, a fairly strong wind coming out of the west, southwest.
The weather may be bad, but it's still an oasis. It's still one of the best days of the year you can have here. And really the track is a place where you come and everything else kind of goes out the window. You know, those exams, getting a job, all the things you think about post-school, it's out the window. You're here, this is the best day of the year, despite the weather.
In all honesty, there are some guys that I know who went to Indiana University who loved the Little 500 but actually never went to the race.
That's a sacrilege. I don't know if I'd go around admitting that.
Well, I think they'd had a few pops, maybe couldn't find their way to Bill Armstrong Stadium. We're through 114 laps. There's about 7 or 8 teams, maybe 9, that are in contention for the 58th title at the men's Little 500. Stay with us for more of our HDNet coverage. Welcome back to Bill Armstrong Stadium here on the campus of Indiana University. Judd Surratt alongside Jason Sonneborn and Dylan Casey braving the elements. Sorry, I ditched the Bud Grant look I had in our open. But it's been a fabulous ride once again. The weather has not deterred the riders nor the crowd here today.
You know, we get to actually talk about the weather because we're in it. You know, we're not in some, you know, nice warm press box or anything. We're up here with the riders feeling it.
What were the worst conditions you ever had to compete in?
Well, you know, it's funny. We were talking about whether or not the race was, you know, what it took to cancel the race or to postpone it. And they said that the only thing was lightning. And I can recall a couple of races, actually some in here in the U.S., where there was actually lightning bolts striking the ground next to me. And I'm thinking to myself, no way, this, you know, they're going to cancel the race. You know, no, I'm waiting for the director to come over the radio on the earpiece and say, okay, boys, you know, let's pack it in. But sure enough, we came through the start-finish line, and everybody was full gas still. So it was we've been through some pretty tough conditions.
Hans Arneson, are you sensing any changes now with 80 laps remaining?
No, it looks like, there's a crash just here on the start-finish line of Delta Sigma Pi. They were on the lead lap. They just went down, but for the most part, I think the leaders are content with the way it's going right now. They're happy, they're riding together. Some of the top teams are still there. I expect that they're waiting for a sprint. They're waiting to make it happen on the last lap.
That's what it came down to last year.
So Delta Sig had that crash right there in the start-finish line. We could actually see the rider getting back onto the bike, and the bars were twisted. So that means that he's just going to have to ride with them that way until he's out, makes contact with the peloton again, the lead bunch, those top 8 riders, and then do an exchange and get a new bike.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dylan. You know, they're turned to the left. He's not going to get off. You know, he's riding with crooked bars, which shows his bike handling skills, of course.
He's doing great, you know, and he's pedaling so fast that little gear, he can only get it going so fast. But, you know, Cutters right now is at the front, but he's going to really benefit from all that traffic because instead of just 8 riders, you have like 20 riders, and that makes the bunch, the lead group longer, and it'll actually make it easier for him to make contact with the lead group again.
Delta Sigma Pi is going to do a bike-to-bike exchange, so they'll try and repair that bike. We alluded to it a little bit yesterday. If for some reason both of the bikes that they are given by the Student Foundation for the race wreck, what are their options, Jason?
There's extra Schwinn bicycles that will get him, but that was just an incredible effort there by Tyler George. Best rider for Delta Sigma Pi, right? Caught back onto to the end of the pack, and now he's got his teammate back in the race.
Yeah, and you can see him just making contact with the back of the lead group. But he's going to want to make his way past through all that lap traffic as quickly as possible. Avoid the crashes. Stay near the front where the race is actually happening so that you don't get stuck behind everything.
2 of the guys for Delta Sigma Pi compete in an event here called cyclocross, which a lot of riders really seem to enjoy, and it's an event unlike any other. Can you describe it?
Yeah, well, it's a really growing race, and I think I've done some cyclocross races, as I think Dylan has as well, but it combines running and cycling, and the bike is essentially a hybrid between a mountain and a road bike. You actually hop over barriers. I think he used some of that cyclocross background to help him with the bent bars there, right?
Yeah,
show some resilience.
Absolutely. Yeah, cyclocross, essentially it's a road bike with tires that are very similar to the tires that they use here on the Little 5 bikes. They got a little tread on them. They're a little bit wider. They have some extra clearance in case there's ever, you're racing in the mud. But they actually have to dismount and mount their bikes to get over barriers and to run up little cliffs and stuff like that. So a lot of the skills that are necessary to be a good cyclocross rider, same things that are necessary to be good here in the Little 5s.
Yeah, it's really good crossover when you think about the surface as well. You know, you think about the cinders and kind of the ruts and how it's a mix between mountain bike and road bike. Cyclocross is a really natural fit.
You know, another interesting difference with the Little 5 bikes and the riders out here, they're actually just using tennis shoes instead of the cycling specific shoes that actually clip into the pedals, much like ski bindings. And that's really largely so that they can do these exchanges.
Mid-40s here at Bill Armstrong Stadium. Most people have dressed accordingly. Sweatshirts, jackets, hats.
Except for those guys.
If you got enough motor oil in you, you don't need it.
And you can see, I think those are Delta Sigma Pi fans. You know, you can see a couple names written on the chest.
Some dedicated fans out here, though. They're waiting for the last lap.
We're at lap 125. Cutters in yellow leading the peloton, coming through here to signal lap 126. Dodds House in second. And moving through that is Black Key Bulls. They are a lap down. One of their riders, just to refresh everybody, Isaac Neff, they were having some difficulties early. He actually got sick trackside, which Hans Arneson was kind enough to report for us. And because of that, it may have cost them the race. Black Key Bulls now making an exchange, but again, they are a lap down. They were one of the heavy favorites for today. Isaac Neff winning at the individual time trials. Also winning at missing out.
See Dodds House coming through the start-finish line. That's Graham Gifford on the bike for Dodds House. He pretty accomplished cyclist. He races on our Indiana Collegiate A's team. He's won a road race this year.
Last year they were third. They have 2 guys who are rookies in the race. Gifford, who you mentioned, and Aaron Knapp.
And I believe Knapp's brother, Ryan Knapp, coached Delta Gamma to victory yesterday. So you see that community. right? Come out in the little 5.
Dan Houch had said before the race, talking to him about Dodds House and some of their strategy, he said, I'm going to hang on Cutters' coattails. I'm going to try and tire some of the other sprinters. We are going to push the pace. We feel like a fast race will favor us. Does it feel fast to you today? We've gone through an hour, 23, and 35 counting with 127 laps done.
Yeah, I really don't think it's that fast. I think our track record is just over 2 hours, and today I see kind of a slower pace, and I see 8 teams on the lead lap. I really don't see Dodds House executing what they had talked about. We'll have to wait and see if over the last 70 laps they have something up their sleeves.
The record, as you mentioned, held by the Cutters back in 1986. 2 hours, 1 minute, 44 seconds.
The victory for the Cutters that day, Jay Paulsgrove actually overtook the team that was on the lead. I think it was in the last lap. It was just an exciting finish there in 1986 for the Cutters.
Here is where things really start to tighten, and the drama intensifies as we're at 128. Once we start to hit 50, the moves will change.
Every time you do an exchange this late in a race, it's just a little bit harder. Your legs are worn out. You're not thinking quite as clearly. And when you're running, you're getting on and off the bike. It just makes it a little bit more difficult with all these laps in your legs.
Dylan, at the top of the show, we talked about the pain factor. What is it like now for these riders?
Well, you know, they've been out there for an hour and a half, and they're starting to get a little bit fatigued. Some of them have crashed. You know, it's cold out there, so that uses extra energy. So they're really starting to, feel the fatigue of the race. And it's like now is actually when they actually have to push through it and focus on what they've come here to do today, which is try to win.
You can see Alpha Tau Omega, they're feeling good about their chances today. I think that's Steve Zimba on the bike. He went by and gave the fans a big wave there, right? You got to keep those fans on a cold day of jumping, in which they are.
Alpha Tau Omega in the purple and white coming up on the outside here in silver. Phi Kappa Psi.
Phi Psi really turning up the heat.
Yeah, so Phi Psi, doing what they call a burn to do an exchange. And Cutters also taking advantage of the same opportunity right there.
Cutters making an exchange. Phi Kappa Psi trying to get an extensive lead, and the exchange about to be made just below us, past the finish line.
That's Mike Siegel for Phi Psi. Just really a great gap, a great burn, setting up his teammate there is Dan Brown.
And some of the other riders, the Delta Sigs, actually taking advantage of the fact that they are doing these burns. The pace gets lifted, and you can see the whole front group is getting strung out right now.
It looks like the Phi Psi pit is awful rowdy after that gap. The guys with their shirts off, that was the Phi Psi fans. 32-degree wind chill, shirt off, bike wheel in the air.
There's Phi Kappa Psi in silver coming across. Wright Cycling trailing Alpha Tau Omega in third. And we see Team Major Taylor in black fourth, Cutters fifth, working up along the outside. Phi Kappa Psi is the only team in this race that has competed in all 58. Last year, they were second, beat in the sprint by Alex Bishop, and it came into essentially turn 4.
There's that Ghost Ride exchange that Jason was talking about earlier. Thetas are also famous. We saw that yesterday happening.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You had the same coach between Acacia and Cap Alpha Theta, and that's why they do their exchanges that way.
Right.
His name's Tom Schwegler. Unfortunately, I haven't seen Tom here yet this year, but he's had a huge dent on the Little 500 over the years. Acacia's coached by Kevin Baines today, a rider who rode for them in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Ride DMC coming in for an exchange. Alpha Tau Omega moving to the front ahead of the Cutters team. 65 laps left.
You can see that the ATO rider there doing a burn to go to the front and do an exchange, and Cutters taking advantage of that and getting in the slipstream of the ATO rider just to keep the pace of the race high. And you know, it's obvious that the Cutter's strategy is to keep the race as hard as possible. Just hopefully they're not burning up too much energy by always riding second wheel and closing the gap.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as hard as they'd like it right now.
No.
Eric Hamilton on the bike for the Cutters team. Yellow jersey wearing number 3 on his right sleeve. Jim Kirkham, their coach, said he was mopey after getting injured. And they had to try and reassure him and said, you know what, you're going to get your fitness level back. Everything's going to be fine. And he is not at 100%, but he is close to 100%. Starting to feel his lungs, and he liked his fitness level.
Yeah, Eric was actually off the bike for a couple months this spring. The hardest thing about being injured, I think, for an athlete is often rest. And so Eric really had a tough time dealing with that rest.
Yeah, definitely. The worst thing you can do is tell a bike rider they can't ride their bike.
It's like, what do you kind of go stir crazy. What?
You know, it's interesting. So just like yesterday with the women's race where we saw Teeter really come out and show their authority right from the very beginning, all the other teams kind of said, all right, fine. You know, you want to own the race? Okay, go for it. You make the race. We'll sit back here and watch. And they ended up losing. We're seeing the same thing happen today. Cutters has actually come out right away from the very beginning, taking control of this race. They're dictating the pace. And it looks like all the other riders on the lead lap are more than happy to just kind of let them do that. So it'll be interesting to see if the Cutters can pull it off.
Cutters coming across still at the top of the peloton, essentially. There's a rider in front of him, but he is a lap down. That's Black Key Bulls.
And Dylan, you talked a little bit about yesterday and what happened. We saw 2 teams half a lap up about 50 laps in, and then they sat up, right? And the team that won was a half a lap down. Today you have 8 teams on the lead lap. It's all about improving your chances.
Absolutely.
Getting some of the other teams off the lead.
Team Major Taylor about ready to make an exchange. There was a burn going on along Team 3 Cutters with a quick read there.
Well, and that's what I mean. Cutters is taking responsibility to keep the pace high, to lift it. Every time one of the other teams does a burn, they jump on the wheel. You know, and they're constantly riding on second or third wheel.
Hans Arneson is down in the Cutters pit.
All right, I'm down here with the coach, Jason Fowler. Jason, are you guys happy with how the race has been playing out so far? And what's your strategy for the rest of the race?
It's been good so far. A few of the teams don't really seem to want to work, but so far we're still in it, so we like it. We'll probably start mixing things up here in the last 50 laps.
What do you guys plan to do within those last 50 laps? Are you waiting for a sprint, or do you want to make an attack to make the win before that?
We have a strategy in place for a sprint, so we'll see if something else shakes out otherwise.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Another guy that didn't want to reveal himself.
But it sounds like they're okay with letting it come down to the last lap.
Yeah, well, I think one of the reasons they're okay with it, Isaac Neff, who won Missing Out and won ITTs, his team is now a lap down. So Cutters, by all intents and purposes, do have kind of the strongest sprinter on the track, which is Sasha Lamb.
By Kapasai going in for an exchange. Can you illuminate one of the things that the Cutters coach had mentioned, that some of these teams out here don't want to work?
Yeah, they don't. Just as Dylan said earlier, they don't want to keep the pace fast, right? They're not taking responsibility to be on the front and to string it out and to really, make it an aggressive race. That's what Cutters is looking for. Cutters doesn't want to see 8 to 10 teams on the lead lap. They want to see it down to 3 or 4, and they want one of those teams to be themselves. Cutters has a long line of tradition where they've lapped the field a number of times, as Hans has. They did it in 1992 and also in the year 2000.
Things have bunched up quite a bit here as we're at lap 142. Just over an hour and a half into the 58th running of the men's Little 500 here at Indiana University.
And you can see Cutters again, Eric Hamilton. He's got a wheel, and he's just going to ride it all the way into the pits.
We thought there would be a deep field this year. Thus far, it has proven true. 8 teams are on the lead lap and in contention. Phi Kappa Psi moving through on the inside, Cutters on the outside in yellow. The Black Key Bulls rider that is there in green and white is a lap down. Dodds House in orange and yellow, sitting in third. And you've got Wright Cycling just behind them, a name we have talked very little about.
Put on your sunglasses there when you're watching Dodge, right? You got a bright jersey and some bright socks to deal with. Style points do not accumulate to any kind of time advantage in today's race.
Dodds House last year felt they did not push enough. And they also felt that they needed to be more attentive.
Here comes Ride DMC on the outside. As we look at our best dressed rider in today's field, Mike Shear. A little bit of retro, right? Bringing back kind of the 80s fad with the bright colors.
And the Argyle socks.
Dylan, that's kind of how you
right
were
after your heart, isn't it?
Well, he was dressed like that last night, Judd.
Lap 145.
All right, you see Phi Psi up there in Wright Cycling. Gosh, they're just really riding great races. Great races.
Yeah, Phi Psi is riding a great race. I mean, constantly sitting there on second, third wheel, right behind Cutters, letting Cutters do all the work, staying out of trouble. Good position.
It's just Ride DMC moving up on the outside, another team that I didn't expect to be there.
And now the pace quickens as we head into turn 4.
Well, because you have a Team Major Taylor exchange happening, and so you see the other teams following him out.
Cutters also doing, this is what we've been seeing him do all day long.
Kenny Parks on the bike.
And the reason they follow that TMT rider out is now Kenny has roughly a quarter of a lap to catch up and get back to the leaders. Now you see Cutters coming in for an exchange, so they're queuing off of each other. You see the top teams queuing their exchanges off of the other teams.
Yeah, it's just like a NASCAR race when you see one of the other cars on the lead lap or whatever come in for a pit. You want to do the same thing, so it's exactly the same strategy that's being employed here.
Except here it's not NASCAR, Dylan.
That's right. It's
Indianapolis 500, right?
My bad.
Well, and there goes Sasha on the outside. Just riding really aggressive. Actually, we got a great story on Sasha. He was out riding over the winter. It was a 30 degree day. A lot of these guys do that all the time. I think it was raining. I heard the story last night. A car pulled over. A little dog got out on the side of the road. The guy left a dog on the side of the road. Sasha didn't even get off his bike. Kind of shows his bike handling skills, right? But he went up on the side, picked up the dog, started carrying the dog home with him about 30 miles from town. Wasn't quite sure how he's going to get him home. One of the other guys gave him a larger jacket, put the jacket on, put the dog on the inside of his jacket, and got the dog from 30 miles away from town back home. Named the dog Cutter Chloe appropriately, and now the Cutters have a team dog.
Oh, that's great. A team mascot.
He's a fascinating story, Sasha Land. Land a part of the victorious team last year for the Cutters. He said he was functionally illiterate essentially growing up because he had a learning disability. He was dyslexic. He couldn't read signs or anything that everybody else takes for granted. And when he had to take an exam that he had to read, he tested out at a reading level at second grade. This was when he was 14. But when someone read him the questions to the exam, he tested out at age 14 as though he were a sophomore in college. He's had to overcome that, and now he's got himself lined up to teach elementary education once he graduates here from the university.
It's just a great story. So often you see people that are not only good bike racers or good athletes, also good in school, and also try to do the right things. And I think you just see that with so many people on the steering committee and the student foundation, also riders.
His father is actually the reason, or his stepfather was the reason he got hooked into this race. His father was a custodian who was taking classes here at Indiana University, and he figured out that he had enough classes to qualify to race, and he competed, one of the oldest ever, at age 35, competed in the race. And that's how he got hooked.
Well, maybe there's a chance I can come back and do the little 5 then.
I didn't say 45.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
49 laps remaining.
Well, I don't know. Dylan, are you still racing? When I first talked to you into coming to the little 500, you used to bring a bike.
Yeah.
But are you still riding? Are you still racing?
Sure, you know, I try to keep my girlish figure. It's a nice way to get out and enjoy the weather. I think cycling is something, you know, it becomes a lifestyle. It's kind of like surfing. You know, it's not just about getting out on the bike. It's a whole approach to everything. But it's a pretty exciting thing.
Phi Kappa Psi in silver leading. Cutters second. Dodds third. And in fourth, Team Major Taylor. There are 8 or 9 that still have a chance to win the 58th Men's Little 500. With 45 laps to go, several teams with an opportunity to win the 58th running of the Men's Little 500. Currently in the lead, Team Major Taylor. They're looking to make a bike-to-bike exchange. Last year, there were 5 teams that had a shot at this race with 10 laps to go. It came down to a sprint. It was Alex Bishop who was on the bike for Cutters.
This is it.
That last lap, man, I tell you, it's so crazy because the last few laps right before you get to it, like, it doesn't seem very loud. And then right when that white flag throws, everything is so loud and the crowd is just going nuts. And you can't hear anything aside just, it's ridiculous. The person that wins the race necessarily isn't really the fastest person. You know, it's the person that uses their energy at the right times and at the right moments, you know, and knowing when to strike and when to lay off.
Alex was mentioned it wasn't necessarily he was the fastest, but last year he was definitely the fastest, and we knew that. That's why that's why the sprint was in the bag, I think, before that last exchange took place. I think last year with Alex winning, missing out, and, you know, we took the white jersey as the series leaders. I think it played a big role in getting the other team's heads that if it came down to the last lap and we were on it and Alex had the bike, then I think it was already in their head that they were fighting for second place.
We were towards the scoreboard on turn 1, so it was really hard for us to see the finish. I mean, as soon as Alex had the inside on the white flag, I knew it was over. I mean, he was just going to be another missing out run, like he said, and it was game over. So,
you know, when it comes down to a sprint, you know, I'm a very confident person with that, and the rest is kind of history. It was 3 years coming, and a lot of upsets and, you know, downfalls and just bad luck those previous years. And to get it that 3rd year, my last year, is really something special.
Last year, Cutters winning for their 8th time. That tied them for the most in the history of this race. They've won it also in 04, 2000, 97, 92, and 88. Just narrowly beaking out Phi Kappa Psi in the sprint and a couple other riders down the stretch. But as a lot of the guys for the Cutters mentioned, once they got that man on the bike at the end, they felt they had it in the bag.
Yeah, he was just the right guy to have on the bike at the right time. Yeah, a lot of times you see sprinters that are a little bit bigger and stronger, and you can see Alex, you know, he has those big legs, those big arms.
Yeah, last year's finish was a true sprint. You know, we had six guys all coming to the line.
40 laps to go. 200 in total. Dodds House, Cutters, Ride DMC, Team Major Taylor, Wright Cycling, Phi Kappa Psi, Alpha Tau Omega, all in contention.
Cutters again on the front. taking control of the race. The other team's happy, content to sit second and third, fourth, fifth, on to eighth, and let Cutters make the race. It's only the last lap that matters.
When Hans Arneson just a moment ago visited with the Cutters pit, their coach had said, we plan on mixing it up a little here in the last 50 laps. Can you decipher that for people who are seeing this for the first time?
Well, you know what they might do is look for an opportunity when one of the other teams is making an exchange, or maybe a couple of teams are making an exchange, to actually take advantage of that moment and throw down an attack. You can kind of create a little bit of chaos and blow the field apart, and then possibly try to ride away from the race.
And what you see happen, a lot of exchanges happen at the end of the race, trying to get the right person on the bike at the right time. What happened yesterday in the women's race, a little gap by DG, and they just held it, right? So it didn't come down to a sprint. They just kind of held that straightaway advantage.
Well, that's right. They took advantage of that opportunity that they saw the other teams when they were making the exchange, and instead of coming in and doing the exchange themselves, she stayed out on the track and won the race.
Some drizzle starting to fall once again here at Bill Armstrong Stadium. It is a bitter, ugly spring day here on the campus of Indiana University. It hasn't been this cold for maybe a decade at the holding of this race. This is the 58th running of the men's Little 500.
I was talking to Stephanie, one of the women on the IU Student Foundation responsible for putting on the race. She said that they were out here till 2:30 in the morning last night painting on the logo for the Little 500 into the center of the field. Just shows how much work goes into putting on this event. It's really amazing.
And it's all put on by students, right? It's not a professional organization that puts it on. It's all by students. And the purpose of the race, again, is for scholarships for working students.
They have also set aside some of that scholarship money to go towards students or people who have been impacted by the events of 9/11. And people associated with the university who have been impacted by that event. That there has been some special money that has been set aside in addition to the $1.5 million that they have raised over the years for working students here at Indiana University.
You know, and that makes a big difference to a lot of these students. You know, these $1,500 scholarships that you mentioned. It makes a big difference. Just, you know, cycling is a very expensive sport, and the amount of time and energy required to, you know, get to this point, all of the equipment, all the time required for training, it's a big burden. So it's really amazing that the foundation has gotten behind all the students and made it possible for them.
And just the skyrocketing cost of an undergraduate education in this country. Dodds House coming through, 35 laps remaining. Cutters second, Ride DMC third, Alpha Tau Omega fourth, Phi Kappa Psi fifth.
There goes, and that's Graham Gifford on the bike for Dodds House. He's going to bring it in for an exchange.
Cutters looking over his shoulder, saying, "Okay, who else is going to come through and help out here?"
Mike Shearer is the sprinter for Dodds House, 10th in ITTs. He'll be the guy that they'll look to get in good position for a sprint toward the end. And I believe the Ride DMC rider, I didn't catch his number as he flashed by, the only guy wearing shirt sleeves today.
You see Wright Cycling coming in for exchange there on the backstretch as well. Wright's just really ridden terrifically today. They have a number of riders that haven't ridden before, and their experienced riders really John Pollock. But just a great effort, right? Leading a rookie team today.
So Jason, what happens when we get down to the final lap? So we have 8 teams on the lead lap, but there's all these other riders in there from teams that have been lapped.
The teams that are down a lap, what they'll do is just out of respect, they won't fight for position or kind of fight for that checkered flag. They'll move out to the side and let the teams duke it out that are on the lead lap and going after the checkered flag.
The man who is riding in short sleeves for Ride DMC, Scott Robertson, a senior from DePauw, Indiana.
Must have some Flemish blood in him or something, because, you know, the Belgians are notorious for loving a beautiful spring day like this where, you know, the conditions are 35-degree wind chill.
You could see him tap his helmet. You know, that probably means he's looking to his teammate to come out. He'd like to bring it in for an exchange.
The Cutters looking to exchange along the back straight. They have, from our vantage point, the far left pit on the far side, and the exchange made. Phi Kappa Psi, for the time being, takes the lead. Dodds House will move to the inside and claim the top spot for themselves. Trailing in purple and white, Alpha Tau Omega. Moving up and through them, a series of riders that all have an opportunity here. 30 laps remaining. 1 hour, 51 minutes in.
Looks like ATO is coming in for an exchange as well on the back stretch. ATO is really riding well today. Also, you know, coached by Norm Hughes, last one in 2006 with Hans.
Steve Zimba said that part of the reason they did not qualify last year, the team they said was riding fast coming out of spring break, and he felt like we were a little bit cocky out there, and it cost us in qualifications. They weren't able to make the 3 exchanges, or they had the 3 opportunities to try and qualify, dropped the bike on the first 2, and made what the judges felt was an exchange that was illegal, and they were eliminated from competition last year before the race even began.
Yeah, it helps to be hungry. You know, you don't want to be kind of the fat champion that won last year and thinks you have it in the bag. So when I think about hungry, I think about Ride DMC. You know, this guy out here with short sleeves coming in for an exchange right now. A lot of teams, you know, trying to get their first win, trying to make a name for themselves.
Lap times are taking about 45 seconds now. We see we're at lap 172, an hour 52 minutes. It's definitely a slower race than we've seen in the past, most likely due to the conditions of the rain and cold. 28 laps to go. This is where we're going to start to see some of the teams like Cutters and maybe Major Taylor start to change the race up a little bit, maybe force the pace even more, maybe take advantage of some of the exchanges, do an attack.
Yeah, we've seen a number of races in the past that haven't come down to sprints. In 1996, the Fidelts won by doing 3 4-lap sets from lap 180 on and just kind of carrying an advantage. Corleones did that in 2002. So there's just a number of ways you can win. You can either win with a small gap, an acceleration and a gap, or you can let it come down to a sprint, but you have to decide what's best for you and your 4 riders.
And we see these riders on the front talking to each other, all right, who wants to do this? Who's going to take advantage? Who's going to make the race? They're kind of laughing about it.
Yeah, you can tell it's not too hard, right?
No.
The Fiji rider up there, he's got a big smile on his face.
Phi Gamma Delta, who you see at the top of that peloton in red and white, 1 lap down, they crashed maybe 50 to 60 laps ago, and because of that, took them out of contention.
I'm going to say watch out for Team Major Taylor today. I think they have a fast sprinter, and they have some experience. They've just been close to the front all day, and they've ridden a good race. Look for a surprise. They could get their first win today.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jason. They've ridden a good race. They've obviously done a lot of work on their exchanges. They have their coach has got all these secret codes between Wall Street and NASDAQ and Jefferson, and they're well prepared.
Dodds going in for an exchange. Ali Kamara will now move himself into the lead, wearing black, Team Major Taylor. Cutters on his wheel, Phi Kappa Psi right behind him, and Kamara is going to head in for an exchange.
We'll see now. Look, you have these 3 riders off the front now. Major Taylor making an exchange. This might be an opportunity for these 3 riders to separate themselves from the other 5 teams.
Yeah, you can see them really. They're trying to make Team Major Taylor hurt a little bit. pick up the pace. You know, there's Faisai on the front. Team Major Taylor, he's got to kind of work his way back up through the riffraff because he wants to catch those guys.
We're almost at lap 177. Team Major Taylor able to make up the ground. Alphonse Eggink on the bike out of Elkhart, Indiana.
So I see a smaller pack now, Dylan. I think we've dropped a couple of the other teams. Wright Cycling doesn't seem to be in the front right now. Delta Sigma Pi.
Ride DMC has dropped.
Yeah, we're down to 5 riders. So three of the 8 are not in the lead group right now.
And I don't see Dodd's House. It looks like there's a little gap right now between the leaders and Dodd's House.
Phi Kappa Psi coming through to signal 178 laps. The peloton has closed to 5. Ride DMC trying to make up some ground in red.
You know, and some of that traffic is actually going to slow the 5 leaders down, and other traffic behind will actually make it easier for Ride DMC to close the gap.
And I think the keep up pace sign there in the Cutters pit was, you know, Dodd's House, they're down right now. There's
That's
a gap
right.
opening up, and the gap looks like it's getting a little bit bigger. Keep up that pace. Come on, get Dodd's House out of contention. They might have a bike problem. I'm not quite sure what's going on with Dodd's House.
Right, you know, Faisai, they just did a bike exchange there, and he's going to have to close the gap, but that actually might help out the other 3 teams because now they have somebody that's going to help them make contact with the front group again.
Alpha Tau Omega in front along the backstretch. Cutters in yellow in second. Team Major Taylor in black in third. Everyone else that you see in that group, other than the Ride DMC rider who is starting to make up some ground here in red, is a lap down.
And you really see the pace picking up a little bit right now. I think a lot of the good teams, they know Dodd's House is down. It looks like he's really pedaling squares. Dodd's House needs to look to do something different. You know, and the top teams are looking to push the pace, improve their chances. You know, Cutter's really riding strong right now. ATO riding strong. Team Major Taylor.
Cutter's looking to get some help up at the front. You know, these guys have separated themselves and want to take advantage of that and not lose the gap that they've created over Dodd's House.
Yeah, you see Clayton really up in the seat right now, kind of increasing that cadence, increasing that speed that he's got.
Clayton Feldman, 5th in ITT, 2nd in missing out. Out of West Lafayette, Indiana. The Cutters team swept the 08 Spring Series.
Looks like good set there by Clayton. It looks like Clayton gave it to Eric Hamilton, who's going to come on fresh. He comes on fresh, stands up, and kicks it in right across the start-finish line.
This is exactly what their coach was talking about in the last 40 laps.
So you talk about excitement. So many things have changed right now. Dodd's House is down. Cutters is pushing the pace. Alpha Tau Omega is just trying to hang on. And Fowler looks animated in the pit. He likes what's happening.
Hans Arneson, your perspective, trackside.
Well, what you're seeing right now, some of the top teams are starting to pick up the pace, and anybody who's being dropped cannot make up that ground. It's so hard with that headwind here on the backstretch. They can't make up that ground. It's definitely going to come down to a sprint, or it's going to be isolated between a few teams. Now you're seeing Cutters and ATO are working really hard right now to separate themselves from the rest of the teams in the lead.
Team Major Taylor just made an exchange, and it was not a good one to Kenny Parks.
See Eric Hamilton for Cutters just burying himself there, Dylan. You know.
Yeah, he's going flat out. Cutters is wide open right now.
Here's the Team Major Taylor exchange.
Yeah, it wasn't that great, but you know, the upside to it is that it's going to put him in right with the other rider from Dodd's house who's off the back right now. So those two are actually motivated to work together to chase down Cutters and get themselves back into the lead of the race.
The Sammy fans still on hand, their team, the pole sitters for today. They had one or two good riders. The question was whether or not they had the horsepower to stay with groups like the Cutters, and they have not.
We can see the Cutters riders really suffering right now, you know, but he's just got to push through that pain.
He's just drilling it. He knows this might be his last set. You know, he's got to go for it with 15 laps to go. A huge gap.
Eric Hamilton up on the bike. Said to get ready for today's race, espresso and video games.
You know, we see ATO there trying to close the gap to Cutters. And this is where he's really got to turn the screws.
Okay, you're going to see a fresh rider get on for Cutters. That's Sasha Land. And you see ATO's got a little bit of an advantage. I think ATO might exchange here in the next couple laps.
If Land is the Cutters sprinter, would he do a short set here, give it to somebody else, and then get back on the bike in the end?
It's very likely, but look at this. Cutters is going to go right over the top of that ATO rider who's tired from closing the gap on the other Cutters rider. I mean, he completely went right over the top of him and dropped him.
He's getting some. This is what you call turning the screw right now.
That's
laying
right.
it all out on the line.
You can see the head bobbling a little bit. You know, that just means that he's going flat out right now. And the ATO rider looking down.
Or ATO is in a world of hurt right now, moving a lot slower than the Cutters are.
Yeah, you know, he was maintaining that pace, but you can look, he's just kind of cracked.
And Dylan, what do they tell you about riding with your head down?
That's right. That's generally not a good sign. But, you know, if ATO might consider doing a bike change right now.
I got to give him credit. You know, he lost some ground early, but ATO's not losing a whole lot more ground right now. And they're keeping him out there. And what you see is just individual time trials, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. These guys trying to take it here on the last 15 laps.
Land fourth in ITTs, and he has opened up more than a quarter of a lap lead.
The ATO rider is just really suffering right now. He's agonizing. And the gap between the Cutters rider and the ATO rider is just slowly getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
The other thing that you guys have talked about, the ability to try and work together to get back in, it doesn't look like that anybody's capable of that at this point.
In the wind, like Hans keeps saying, the wind just plays such a factor in that. Once you lose a little bit, it's tough to make that back up.
We're being told that Steve Zimba will step on the bike next for ATO, Alpha Tau Omega. But it is the Cutters that are now legging it out. It's moving up to almost half a lap.
Well, my guess is that if ATO comes in to do an exchange right now, the Cutters are also going to do an exchange. So it's going to be, you know, two fresh riders going head to head.
And because they are on the same side for their pits, they are able to see one another. Team Major Taylor on the opposite side of the track from Cutters. We're at lap 189.
It's a great exchange by both teams.
You're going to have ATO and Phi-Psi essentially together now, trying to close that gap on the Cutters.
That's right, and the Phi-Psi rider's looking over his shoulders. Cutters right here just going flat out. But behind him, here we see the Phi-Psi rider and ATO getting together. These guys need to work together now to bring the Cutters back. Yeah, come on, jump on. Let's get the job done. Let's go.
That Phi-Psi rider, Adam Mercer, really closed the gap. He pulled him back.
Yeah, but you know, they're wasting too much time talking to each other. They just got to get down to business.
There you go. He got a little help, right, Dylan? He got what he wanted. The ATO rider's coming through now.
Yep.
10 laps to go. Make it 9 as the Cutters cross. Lap 191, 200 laps for the 58th running of the men's Little 500. The Cutters victorious last year.
Right now, Cutters just needs to keep the gas floored and hope that the Phi-Psi and ATO will start to kind of squabble amongst themselves and not really collaborate that well. And if you're the ATO or FISI rider, you just got to put aside all your differences and go flat out right now, or otherwise you're racing for second and the race is over.
There was a pack of about 9 riders that were in contention up until maybe lap 150, and then the cutters started to break it wide open.
They did. They have almost a half lap advantage now. The FISI rider, he's saying, no, I want to do an exchange, and his coach is like, no, you can't do an exchange. You guys need to work together right now. Part of the problem also is ATO is on one side of the track, FISI is on this side of the track, so they can't even exchange at the same time. It's actually more difficult for them because of track position. Cutters here just clearly got the gas pedal floored.
Yeah, Paul Sigfusson, he's almost got a half lap lead now in our second and third place teams.
Sigfusson said when he had a chance to look at last year's video, he had no idea how much he was abused by the other riders because he was a rookie and he had no idea. He said all the other riders made him stay in the front of the pack, and he had to bear the brunt, and not a great exchange there from Phi Kappa Psi.
So FISI's doing an exchange, Cutters almost half lap. We're seeing kind of a regrouping of the lead teams. We've got Delta Sig, ATO, Major Taylor together with FISI just coming off the back trying to catch up, while we have a Cutters rider clearly on his own in a different league right now.
Do they have enough laps to try and make this up? How many do you need to make up the gap that Cutters has now extended to?
Well, if the 4 riders that are chasing Cutters right now work together and go flat out, they might have a chance of catching Cutters. But my guess is that they're going to hesitate and look around too much. No one really wants to commit more than the other, and that's going to be just enough for the Cutters to win this race solo.
194 laps complete. 6 to go as the Cutters come across the line. That's Clayton Feldman on the bike for the Cutters.
Clayton's just letting it all go right now. You see them doing shorter sets. Cutters are doing 2-3 lap sets, trying to keep people fresh. And the chase group, to me, just doesn't look like they can pull it together.
They're not working well together, The Cutters are saying, that's right. This is the House of Pain, and the Cutters came well prepared, obviously. From the very beginning, they made this race, and at the very end, they're going to take it home.
I don't think the pain is factored in for them. They seem oblivious to it.
It's true. It's like the more the better. Almost more than a half lap advantage now on the rest of the field.
This is the 25th time that the Cutters have competed in the Little 500. 22 times they have finished in the top 10. They raced for the first time in 1984 and won. 4 laps left. The Cutters have never won back-to-back.
And there's, I believe on this track since 1981, there's never been a back-to-back winner. So the Cutters are trying to do something today that no team has ever done on this track. No team since Delta Chi has won a championship back-to-back. And the Cutters have a great chance of it today. They've done what it takes, and they've got over a half a lap lead right now, and they're just turning it up.
Final exchange here with 3 laps remaining for the Cutters. 197 complete.
Looks like looks like Sasha Land, their veteran's gonna close it out for them. Just looking super smooth and really, really comfortable on the bike.
Jim Kirkham said he's the fastest guy on the track no matter what happened at ITTs. That was won by Isaac Neff of the Black Key Bulls.
Cutters just walking away with this race right now. Look at them all jumping up and down. They can already taste the milkshake.
Yeah, you can see a lot of emotion. There's not a whole lot of things that can go wrong right now.
The white flag being shown just below us. 1 lap to go. 199. Sasha Land on the bike for the Cutters. And he is pumping those legs, extending the lead.
Cutters really just took advantage of this race. They really took it.
The Cutters coming through now on the back stretch and into turn 4. They exploded this race with about 20 laps remaining, and they have demolished the field for back-to-back wins for the first time. The most decorated team ever, the Cutters, the winners of the 58th Men's Little 500.
Well, they really did a great job. They took advantage. They took control of the race. Here we're going to watch the finish for the second place.
You got Ali Kamara driving it now for Team Major Taylor. He's got a gap, and he's just turning it over. That's Ali Kamara. Team Major Taylor takes second, Alpha Tau Omega in third, Dodge House in fourth, Phi Kappa Psi in fifth. Great race for those guys. Everybody deserves a hand, and the Cutters certainly deserve theirs with their 9th victory today.
So that makes them the winningest team of
Ever.
all time.
Their 9th ever.
Well, you know, I got to hand it to the Cutters. They really took this race by control right from the very beginning. They took responsibility. They controlled the entire race. They were aggressive, and it paid off. And, you know, it was like a really well-executed strategy right from the beginning. Play-by-play, perfect race.
When Hans Arneson talked to one of their coaches in the pits, he said we were going to try and mix it up with 50 laps. First they knocked off, there were about 9 teams that were still on the lead lap and still on the peloton. They knocked that down to 5 and then just put the pedals to the ground and they ran away with it.
You're right.
Hans Arneson is in the Cutters pit.
That's right, I'm down here in the Cutters pit. This is the 9th victory for these guys, and they've never done it back-to-back. Guys, what can you say about that?
That was a crazy race, the weather, everything. We wanted to shake it up at the very end, and we saw it split up on one Dodge going for a gap, and we continued to hammer it, and it worked out.
The strategy was perfect, Sasha. You guys kept a gap going. Nobody could keep up with that with this headwind. You rode faster than anybody out there.
I can't express how much this means to me. It's my senior year. Worked hard. It's just awesome.
Congratulations.
For Sasha Land, victorious for the 2nd time. The Cutters winning this year, last year, 04, 2000, 97, 92, 88, 86, and 84. And they didn't need a sprint this time. Last year, they needed Alex Bishop to sprint it at the end and win it. Cutters, the winningest team ever out here in the Little 500, followed by Delta Chi, Phi Kappa Psi, and Phi Gamma Delta.
Well, you know, there was that moment with about 6 or 7 laps to go where Cutters was laying it down, and ATO had a chance to close the gap and make it a 2-team race, but Cutters was going flat out, and the ATO rider just couldn't close that gap, and that's really when this race became a Cutters victory.
Jim Kirkham, their coach, said that the conditions he felt were reminiscent to when they won back in 1992. 40 degrees, cold, and windy. Sasha Land at the end, capping off a spectacular ride from the Cutters team. They blew up the race, winning it for the 9th time. The 58th running of the Men's Little 500. Stay with us for more of our coverage on HDNet. Welcome back to the 58th Men's Little 500. The Cutters team victorious for the 2nd consecutive year, the 9th time overall. They wear the yellow jersey signifying the championship that they captured last year. A lot of people around here talk about the fact that the spring series, whoever wins that's usually a good indicator, not where you qualify and whether or not you start on the pole. They have won the spring series in back-to-back years. They have won the title in back-to-back years. Down to the trophy stage.
Your second place team. Team Major Taylor, the corporate sponsor, Steak and Shake. Ali Kamara from Bloomington, Indiana. Alphonse Egging from Elkhart, Indiana. David Fong from Singapore. And Kenny Parks of Goshen, Indiana. Team Major Taylor.
Is that it? Just take this back.
And now coming to the platform, your 2008 champions, a team called the Cutters with their 9th championship since forming. Elliott Stone Company, the corporate sponsors. Clayton Feldman from West Lafayette, Indiana. Eric Hamilton from Brazil, Indiana. Sasha Land in Bloomington, Indiana. And he was an outstanding swimmer for the Hoosiers, Paul Sigfusen of Hinsdale, Illinois. The Borg Warner Trophy being handed to the Cutters. The lays about the necks also.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
I'll taste the milkshake this year. Hey, give me that thing back.
Oh, you got it, baby.
You
deserved it.
Woo!
Yeah.
Shake it.
Now we see the Bill Armstrong Trophy about to be presented to the Cutters, emblematic of the champions of this race. Back-to-back winners for the first time since Armstrong Stadium opened in the very early 1980s. Race director Matthew Ewing presenting the Schwinn bike. Again, another symbol of the championship for a team called the Cutters.
We witnessed history today. The Cutters winning back-to-back, first time it's been done, as Chuck Crabb, the public address announcer here at Bill Armstrong Stadium, mentioned, since the early 80s. First time it's ever happened in this stadium. The race used to take place just a stone's throw from here. And down with the victorious team, our Jason Sonneborn.
Okay, so this is obviously a momentum occasion for the Cutters, right? Number 9. Let's talk about the pain cave in the last 20 laps. Sasha, what was the strategy? Windy day, obviously, but you guys put the other teams in the pain cave at the end of the race.
We were obviously the returning champions. We knew we'd have a big target on our back. We knew we had a really strong team. Every rider here really, I've finished the race, but every rider here put in their time and effort to win this race, and we just knew that by using every rider and riding our best, responding to what was going on, staying up front, staying out of trouble, that we'd put ourselves in a position to win. And no other team's done that on this track, so we're just honored, and I can't put into words how much this experience has meant to me. I'm just so pleased to be graduating this year and leaving with this. So.
All right, so we saw the grimace on Eric's face today. This is number 9 for the Cutters, first back-to-back win here at this track. Jim Kirkham, talk a little bit about being number 9, the winningest team in Little 500 history.
Well, it's been our goal all along as a team to win so much that they kick us out of the race. So we're working on that, and we want to be the first team to 10. We have also joked about that a lot. It's a really special moment, and it goes back for many, many years, and a lot of people that came here to watch us today were part of that. And it's nice. It's a good family.
Yeah, it's really special. So congratulations, guys. Number 9 for the Cutters. Well done. Well done. Right here.
Dylan, they are such a veteran group. Jim Kirkham had said, everyone knows the orders. I'm just going to let everybody ride. Enough talk. Too much talk. We don't need to talk. Victorious again.
You know, Judd, they did a great job. They came out here. They took the responsibility of being the defending champions. They have a long legacy of success in Cutters. They came out here and said, you know what, we're going to take control of this race. We're going to follow every move. We're going to take full responsibility, and we're going to win it. So the Cutters, congratulations to them. Great race.
And they buried some able riders and some able teams today.
Yeah, I mean, they were on it. They showed from the very beginning that they were going to, make the race, and every opportunity that they had to take advantage of putting themselves, into a position of winning the race, they took it, and they did it.
T Major Taylor finishing second. Alpha Tau Omega game for about 150, 160 laps, finishing third. Dodds House fourth. They just couldn't keep the pace. Phi Kappa Psi ends up finishing fifth. Still looking for their first victory since 1978. The Cutters will take a celebratory lap here at Bill Armstrong Stadium. Well earned. Sasha Land talked about how much it meant. How much could it also mean for a guy like Eric Hamilton, who missed a couple of weeks, 2 events, had knee surgery, and had to sit out last year in order to get a chance to compete and win. You have been watching HDNet's exclusive coverage of the Men's Little 500. The executive producer of HDNet Sports is Daryl Ewald. Our director today, Mike Sheehan. Coordinating producers, Johnny Galpin. HDNet Engineering by Dan Neighbors and Jeff Millay. And thanks to all of our local crew here in Bloomington for their help today. For my partners, Dylan Casey, Jason Sonnenborn, and Hans Arneson, I'm Judd Surratt. So long from Bloomington, Indiana.
You've been watching an exclusive high-definition presentation of HDNet.